Hey guys, this is Mitch with Fine Point CGI, and today we're going to continue our C# Nakama integration tutorial series where I take you from knowing nothing about Nakama to understanding at least the very basics of how Nakama works. So in this video, we're going to talk about how to use groups. We're going to talk about how to add and remove users, how to create groups, how to promote people, demote people, things like that. Then we're going to move into talking about chatting, and chatting is basically being able to direct message people or send group messages to an entire group or to a lobby, so that way you guys can communicate while playing your game. And then finally, we're going to talk about how to actually get your project to work outside of your local network. That's one of the big questions that a lot of people had. So we're going to be covering that today, and we're going to be using DigitalOcean for that. So look forward to that. And of course, you guys can jump to any of my time codes in the description and go ahead and just do those specific parts. Most of these areas are independent. So that's what I have in store for you guys today. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so the first thing we need to talk about is group. And basically groups allow people to build out a team and be able to socialize and work together and basically be part of a guild. So in order to do a group, first things first, I'm going to come in here and hide the friend tab here and the store data tab. That way we just have some additional space here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, add a child node. I'm going to add in a panel. Like so. I'm going to make it about, I don't know, yay big, give or take. I'm going to double click on the panel and I'm going to call it group. Like that. I'm going to right click, add a child node. I'll add in a line edit like so. We'll add this guy in. We'll make it about this big, give or take. And then we'll come in here and for placeholder text, we'll just say name of group like so. And what this is going to be used for is it's going to allow us to actually create our group. We'll call this group name like that. I'm going to right click, add a child node. I'm going to add in 4 buttons. I'm going to add in a button, this, and the first button that we add in is to create that group, right? So we're going to name a group and then we're going to click the create button. We'll do create. We'll rename this create. We will duplicate this guy. So 1, 2, 3 times. We'll pull this over. We'll pull this down and then we'll pull this across like that. We'll rename create to get group. And we'll go ahead and grab this as well. So get group. We're going to grab this one and do close group like so. We'll go ahead and that. And then we'll do the same thing here. Delete like that. Now I'm going to need to get rid of these spaces here because I don't like having spaces names. So we'll go ahead and get rid of those. It's just more of a preference thing on my end. You guys don't necessarily have to do that, but it just makes things a bit easier for me. I'll do that like that. And we're going to run out of a little bit of space here. So I'm going to go ahead and just make just a touch bigger for right now. Now we may need to expand this panel. We probably will actually need to expand this panel to add in the capability of, you know, joining a group, leaving a group, things like that. There's going to be a lot more user management, things like that we'll have to go through. But this is just how to create a very basic group. So I'm also going to right click, add a child node, and I'm going to add in another panel like this. I'm going to bring this guy over here and I'm going to do this. I'm going to call this group members like that. I'm going to right click, add in a child node. We'll add in a VBox container. And I'll explain why this is getting created in one moment. Okay, so we'll go ahead and expand this guy to be full size. We'll bring this guy down like this. We're going to right click, add in a child node, and we'll add in a rich text label. We'll just call this group members like so. And I'm going to expand this all the way across the top like so. Down just a tiny bit. And I am going to do BB code enabled, and I'm going to center this. So bracket, bracket, center, bracket, bold, like that with a B. And there we go. Now this is going to serve as a way to show all the members of our group. So that's kind of the purpose of this. The reason why I'm just adding this in is because when we do our get group, that's going to get all of our members of that group. So basically I want to have this already put in here so that way when we code, we don't have to go through and rebuild all of that stuff. So once we have this, I'm going to go ahead and hook all of these buttons up. So I'll come in here, I'll click on this button, go node, button down, and I'm going to copy this guy, connect. It's going to open up VS Code here. We're going to scroll down to the bottom, and I'm going to put in a comment here and put group section. That way I can keep track of this and keep track of what's going on. And actually, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually make this into a region. So something I've never talked about is regions. So we hit dollar or pound region, then I can come in here and go pound end region. And a region can be really useful because you can actually come in here and name it. So I'll just say group section, that. And that's going to make things a little bit better because since it's a region, we can collapse it like this. So now I can just come in here and say public void paste parentheses bracket like that. And then if I close this, you'll see that it hides that group. And it also adds right here a little word right here. So we could actually grab this and let's say we wanted to look for our friends section, which is right here. So this is get data. This is our friends section. So I could actually come in here, paste, come down here and do end region like this. And then you can see I could change this to friend section like that. And then I could do the same thing here for storage. So this is just a way for you to get a really nicely laid out code base, and it can really help your code be organized. So you can see right here, store section, friends section, group section. That's just something to keep in mind. I know that this is kind of a detour, but I figured that it would be useful for you guys to have that knowledge. Now, once we have this, we need to actually create that group. So in order to create a group, it's actually really quite easy. All we need to do is say var group is equal to await client dot create group async like that. Now we can pass in our session variable like that. And then we need to pass in basically what the name of our group is going to be. So if I hit comma, you can see it's going to look for a name. So in order for us to do that, we need to get our node of that has our group name. We'll say get node bracket text edit, or actually I think it's called a line edit. So we'll do a line edit like that. And then we'll go hunt down the path of this object. So you'll see that if we take a look at this, it's going to be right here under main UI group. So we'll go group slash group name like that. Then we'll go dot text comma, and then we can pass in a description. Now a description is not necessarily required, but basically you could pass in a description and that kind of says this is what this is about. In our case, I'll just pass in test dsc for test description comma, and then we can pass in an avatar URL. Now by default it's empty, so you can see all of these guys are actually defaulted for us. So technically we don't need to pass in a description, it'll just default to nothing. But if we want to, we could pass in an avatar URL, which would be really useful if we wanted to have an avatar for our entire group, something like a coat of arms or something like that. But if we don't want to, we could either pass in null, or we could just skip it by typing lang tag space quote en or English. So lang tag allows us basically to say, hey, what language is this group? And the nice thing about that is that it can be really useful for you to know, is this group English? Is this Spanish? Is this Japanese? Right? Because you might not want to list it if it's not an American or an English group, or if it's not a language that person understands. There's no point in showing that group, if that makes sense. We'll hit comma, and then you can come in here and type open colon. And open allows us to determine if it's an open group or not. In our case, we'll say true for right now. And then if we want to, we could also set a max count. Now, I'm not going to, but if you set a max count, you can say this is the max number of people that could be in my group. So let's say you only want guilds to have 16 members, or you only want guilds to have, 32 members. You can go ahead and do that right here just by going comma, max count colon, and then you can set it to whatever you want. In my case, I guess I'll go with 32 since I've already written it. We'll go ahead and hit semicolon. And what this is going to return, it's going to return a group that's been created. So we'll say gd.print group like that. And now if we come in here and we hit play, providing that everything's been hooked up correctly, and we'll let that run through, and then we'll hit submit, and you'll see that it looks like we authenticated properly. We'll go test, we will click create group, and you'll see that we get back some additional data here. So if we head over to our Nakama console, you can see we get a bunch of RPCs as it goes through and does its connection and all of that stuff. And then if we take a look at our groups, you'll see that we now have a test group. And you can see here's all the information that's associated with that group. So you can see we already have a member, and the thing is when you create a group, those members get added right here. So when you create a group, you become the super admin of that group. Now you might be asking, okay, what is a super admin? So basically a super admin is an admin that can delete the group. So you become basically the guy that owns that group. So you can change all the parameters, you can delete users, you can go ahead and delete the group itself. So there are 4 levels when it comes to where you are in the group membership status. So you have super admin, which means that you own it all. You are an admin, which means that you can actually update the group and kick, promote, demote, and ban people, right? There's regular members. They can't really do anything. They're just members of the groups. And then there is the join request state, which basically just says, hey, you can join, or you're requesting to join that group, if that makes sense. So with that being said, okay, how in the world do I actually delete that group? Well, if we grab onto this guy, double click on button down, we copy this guy, connect it, go all the way to the bottom, and then come in here and go public void paste bracket like that. We can go ahead and delete that group. Now, the beauty of it is it's actually really easy. Var result is equal to await client dot delete group asynchronously. Now you'll need to pass in a session token. So we'll pass in our session token like usual, comma, and then you need to pass in a group ID. So this is where things get a little weird. So you have a unique group ID right here. That's the group ID. So you need to pass in this value right here. So how do you get that value? Well, that is where get group comes in. So we can't actually delete a group without doing get group first. So let's go ahead and get our group. So we'll double click this, Control A, Control C, connect. We'll scroll down and then we'll go public void get group asynchronously bracket. And I'm going to go ahead and comment this guy out for right now, so that way we can get back to that in a second. So when you do your get group, what you're doing is you're just fetching back that group themselves. Now, what we can do is we can list the groups that we are a part of. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull back that entire list. So we'll say var result is equal to client dot list user groups asynchronously like that. We'll pass in our session like so. And that should allow us to do that. It takes one argument. I believe we need to await as well to do that. So if we hit comma, we can go ahead and pass in a name filter here. So we'll just pass in whatever our node was. So this guy right here. So our group name dot text. We'll pass that guy in, comma, and then we'll have to pass in a state value. So basically the state parameter is kind of like the relationship. You could say if this person's like an admin or stat. Now, I'm not really worried about that. So what I'm going to pass in is limit colon. And for a limit, we're going to say 5, even though we should never have a limit like that. And then we'll say cursor colon 0. And that's basically going to tell us where we want to start our stuff. Or at least, let's take a look. What does it require for cursor? A string. So we'll say cursor and we'll just bring in an empty bracket like that. Now it does look like it's a bit mad at us. So let's take a look. It does have an overload. So this should be the right overload. If we peek the definition on this, string user ID. It looks like their documentation is just wrong on this, because I'm looking at it and this is not what they're looking for. So typically you could pass in some kind of variable to filter out different things, but it looks like they eliminated that capability. So that's really unfortunate, but I'll go ahead and just go like this. And then I'm assuming it's going to get mad at me because it takes 3 arguments. So it's looking for a state parameter, even though it's nullable. So I will pass in session null. Let's see if null will bring back what I'm looking for. And we'll go from there. And then we'll say for each var item in result user groups like that, gd.print item dot, and this is going to be a item of some description, so we can just pass in that group and go ahead and do that. Now if we refresh this, in theory this should work, so let's go ahead and take a look at it. If we submit and then get group, it should come back with our group right here. We just created this group, so it comes back with that group information right there. Now, this is going to be a list of groups, so we need to actually check to see if we have the same name. So we'll need to say if item.group.name is equal to, and then we can go ahead and pass in this get node group text right here. And that's going to require us to go ahead and use that. And then from there, we can go ahead and set a value, right? We can say, hey, this is the group that I want to get, right? So, or this is the group that's my current group that I have, right? So I'm going to go bracket, bracket, and I will go ahead and scroll all the way up to the top and just go public. And if we take a look at what this object is, it is a IAPI group. So we'll grab that interface, IAPI group or current group like that, or maybe selected group or current selected group. Current selected group is probably a good title. We'll come down here and we'll just say current selected group is equal to item.group like that. And now we can come up here and say var result await delete group asynchronous, comma, and then we need to get our group ID. So current selected group dot group dot ID like that. And then we can go ahead, and it looks like it's mad at us real quick. Cannot assign a void to an implicitly typed variable. Does this not return anything? It doesn't. So we actually don't return anything. So what I would do is just do this. Go. Like that. Because it actually doesn't return anything. So it doesn't notify you that it's completed, which it really should return a success or failure. But that's neither here nor there. So now if we come in here, we refresh, we should be able to come in here and submit for our name of our group. I believe we use the name test. So copy that test, go ahead and get the group and then delete the group. And now if we come back to our groups, you'll see that that group has been removed. So that's basically how you create a group and you delete a group and you get that group's information. So now the question is, okay, how do I add users to my group? Well, thankfully, that's actually really, really easy. All we need to do is we need to head over to here. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to go ahead and expand this panel. So I'm going to drag this little group members section over because something I did not think about was actually adding users and things like that. So we'll come in here and we'll expand this guy, make it nice and large. Like so. So I'm going to make it nice and big because it's going to have a lot of stuff. So we have our name of our group. And then of course, if we want to put a description, we could have a description section. We have creating a group, deleting a group, closing a group, which I will code in a minute, and then getting the groups that that user is attached to, right? So how do we add a member to the group? Well, all we have to do is let's duplicate this, bring this over here, and we need to basically be able to add a user. Now, when we want to add a user, we need to actually have some kind of we'll name this at join group like that. Then we're going to right click disconnect, right click connect, and we'll go ahead and copy this and scroll all the way down to the bottom and come in here and go ahead and say public async void paste bracket bracket. And in order to join a group, all we need to do is come in here and just do await client dot join group async like that. We'll pass in a session like so, comma, and then we need to pass in our group ID. So we'll say current selected group dot ID, right? But this is going to throw a problem, right? When we clicked get group button down, we listed our user groups asynchronously, right? So that only listed our groups, right? The groups that we are a part of. So how can we list all of the groups, right? Well, that is where we can change this to list groups asynchronous. So list groups async like that. It takes all the same parameters as the other one. You can see right here, here's all the parameters. So we can pass in a session, a name if we want to use a name, like a specific name. We can use a limit value. We can pass in a cursor language tag. So that way, if it's a special language, we can pass in if a specific member is associated with it, if it is an open group or not an open group. And then we can also pass in some retries and cancellation tokens. So what's really cool is you can really define what this is going to be. So the name is just a name that we can define. So you could basically say like, here's a list of the group names that I'm willing to join. The limit is the number of limit to the group. So how many we're going to be able to pass in. The cursor is where we're currently at in the stack. So basically like what number, what index we're at. And then the language tag. So really mostly what you're going to use is the name, the limit, and most likely the language tag and open. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say session null limit 5 cursor empty comma language tag, and we'll make that en for English, and then we'll pass in if it's open. So open, and we'll make that true. So only open groups will show up. Now, if you want other groups to show up that are not open, you could say open false, and it'll show all the non-open groups. So it's up to you on which one you want to use. And if you don't pass in anything, then it will just list all of them. So from here, we'll get back a group list. So what that's going to give us is if we look at the results, it's going to be an API group list. So we can go in here and go dot groups like that. Now that's going to pass back the groups that we have. So if we come in here and do item dot, you will see this is the group information right here. So we don't need to do item dot group anymore. We can just say item dot name, and then we can just do currently selected group is item like so. Now, one thing that we could do, which would make it a bit more flexible and a bit nicer to look at, we could actually build a group members almost, but for our group list. So if I come in here, I'm just going to grab these guys, copy it, and then go ahead and paste it down here. And then instead of making it full rect like that, I'll go ahead and just grab this, bring it over here. I'll grab this VBox container and bring it over here. And then I'll just say group list instead. So we'll say group list like so. And that's going to allow me to basically have a list of the current groups that are available to me. I'm going to make this just a touch bigger. That way it kind of matches up with what I'm trying to do here. It's about that big. And there we go. Now, when we do get group now, it's going to go ahead and fetch back those groups. Now, this is no longer get group. This is join group. So we'll just change that real quick. Now, if we go back into here, when we get back our groups, instead of doing currently selected group, we can just come in here and get rid of this whole if statement actually. So what we can do instead of doing all of what we did before is we can actually make a list of groups. So we'll say var vbox is equal to vbox new vbox container like that. And then var hbox is equal to a new hbox container like that. Now what this is going to do is it's going to build a vbox and an hbox container in memory. And basically that means that we can now use this as if it exists inside of Godot, right? And that means that we can treat it like an object. So I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to add in a name label as well. So I'm going to go label is equal to a new label like that. And I did a colon, not a semicolon. There we go. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a button as well. So button is equal to a new button. And now I can go ahead and set up my objects, right? So I can actually set them up to have values. So name label.text is equal to group.name, item.name, like that. And then I can say hbox.add_child name label, like that. And then I can say button down, and then I'm going to go plus equals on button down like that. And actually I think I should probably do a better name than on button down. So I'll do on get on select group button down. We'll do that. That's a good title. And then you'll see that it says it doesn't exist. So we'll quick fix and we'll generate that method. That's going to create it right here. So you'll see it's there. Now, what would be nice is when you click this button, if it selects our current group, right? So we have current selected group, right? And I want to set that equal to a group, let's say, which means I'm going to want this to take in a group value, right? So what can I do? Well, I can just type I group, I believe it's an IAPI group, if I remember correctly, group like that. Let's see. It is IAPI group, so that works. But you'll see now this doesn't work. So now what do we do, right? Well, if I click quick fix, it doesn't work, right? It wants us to generate a method. So what do we do, right? Well, this is one of the really cool things about Godot and about C#. So we can do what's called binding, and binding allows us to basically bind data from one place to another. And I'm basically going to use a lambda. So that's going to be a parentheses pointer like that. And then I'm going to pass in my item like that. And that will achieve what we're trying to do. So what I'm doing here is basically I'm saying, I want you to run this function here, which is going to go and run this function with this object, basically. So I'm telling C# to say, hey, instead of just running an empty onSelected button down function, go ahead and run a empty function, but pass in this data. So send this over here. And basically what we call this is called a lambda expression or an anonymous expression. It's basically saying that you can bind a parameter to call a function, more or less. And it's really useful for this case. So now I'm going to do button.text is equal to quote select group like that. And then I'm going to go hbox.addChild, and I'm going to add the button to my hbox container like that. And then finally, I'm going to add my vbox container, and I'm going to add the child, which is going to be my hbox container, like so. And then finally, I'm going to go ahead and do get node. Whoops. Well, that's not what I want. But there we go. And the type of object is going to be that vbox container. So vbox container like that. And I'm going to go and hunt down exactly where this needs to go. So it's going to be group/vbox container like so. And then I'm going to go .addChild, and I'm going to pass in my vbox object like that. So what this is doing is it's effectively constructing a UI element through code. Now, we could use a scene to do this. We could go and create a pack scene and do it that way. And that is a way to do it. And I've done it a million times that way. But doing it this way through code is something that not a lot of people cover. So I figured that this would be really cool to show how to create actual objects and instance them into Godot and have them exist in the world as if you created a pack scene. Now I'm going to hit Control S and I'm going to go ahead and try it. So we're going to refresh. It may not build because I think our join group, oh, nope, we're good. So what we can do is submit. We'll go ahead and create the test group. We'll go ahead and create test 2. We'll go ahead and create test 3. And then I'm going to hit get group. And you will see there's all of my elements right there. And if I select this group and I click delete group, so I just selected group 1 and I clicked delete group, you will notice that test does not exist, but test 2 and 3 exist. And that's because I created the group, I selected the group, and I passed in that group information from memory using this little lambda function right here. So it bound that data and allowed me to pass it into that function. So think of all of the really cool things you can do that you weren't able to do before. So if you ever need to pass additional data with a signal, you can do it just like this and it will work every time. So it's a really cool feature that exists. And now that means that I can now join a group as well. So if I have my other person here and I say test 2 and I submit, I get groups, I select test 3 and I click join group. In theory, if I take a look at test 3 and I look at the members, there is test 2. Perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. So now the question is, how do you leave a group? So leaving a group is actually pretty easy. What we'll do is we'll come in here. We're going to duplicate our join group. We'll bring it over here. We're going to come in here, right click disconnect, and we're going to type leave group like that. And I'm going to Control A, copy, and I'm going to change the name of this to leave group. And then I'm going to go into my node, right click connect, and I'm going to connect it to my main UI. Just like that. Now I'm going to scroll down to my group section here, and we'll come in here and we'll say public async void on leave group button down. And what we can do is we can just go await client.leave group asynchronously, and then we could just pass in our session, just like we did before, capital S, comma, and then it's going to ask for a group ID. Now, if you remember, we have a currently selected group right here, so we can just copy that, paste, and there you go. So now if we go ahead and test that real quick, you'll see that once I log in with, I believe it's going to be test 2. If we take a look at our Nakama console real quick and we go over to our group, you'll see inside of, I believe, test 2, or maybe it's test 3. There we go. We have test 2 as a part of that group. So we'll say test 2, submit. We're going to get group and we will select test 2 and we will click leave group. So now if we refresh, it does not look like it was successful. So let's see if we have any errors here. Authenticated with session token. That should be fine. Select, I believe it was test 2, right? Or was it test 3? Test 3. So let's select test 3, leave group. Let's refresh. And you will see that we have left that group. So we've left the actual group and we're no longer a part of it. Now, what if test wants to make the group closed? So they want to close this little section here. Well, that's actually also extremely easy. So we'll come in here, right click, add a child node. We'll add in a toggle, or I believe they're called check button, like that. I do think that toggle is a better name, but we'll go with that. And then for the text, we'll type open like that. Now, when do we want to close a group? We can select that group and then toggle this little toggle. So this probably isn't the absolute greatest way to handle it, but I think that this will work. So we'll go into here, we'll double click on this and we'll say close open group like that. And then we'll come in here and we'll say on toggle like that. We'll copy this, connect it, go all the way down to the bottom, and do a public void and then parentheses bracket bracket. And then we can go await client dot update group asynchronously. And updating a group allows us to change different values of it. So when you want to update a group, you can basically just update its data. So you can see here, you can pass in your session like that, and then you can pass in the group ID. So it's going to be our selected group. So current selected group.id, and then they're going to ask for any updated data that we want. So if we wanted to, instead of just opening and closing the group, which in this case, we're just going to let us do that. But, well, now that I'm thinking about it, actually, as much as I don't like calling audibles while I'm doing the tutorial, I think what I'm going to do is call an audible real quick. So I think it would be good for us to show, hey, here's how to change your group's information completely. So let's create a panel for this. Let's come in here. Let's right click on our group, add a child node. Let's add in a panel like so. And then let's bring that panel over here. Let's make it about this big. Let's grab our open close. Let's drop that into here and drag that guy over. Let's just come in here, copy, paste, bring in this little text box underneath our panel, and we'll call this edit group like that. We're going to change this to group name. That's fine. We'll bring this down, control duplicate, call this description like that. And then we'll come in here and say description of group. And then I believe the other parameters that we have access to, if I come in here, hit comma, space, you can see we get a description, an avatar URL. So if there's an avatar that we want to put in, language tag, and then outside of that, it's just null token or cancellation tokens and a retry configuration. So we'll make this just a touch bigger like so. And then we're going to do whether it's open, and then we'll come in here and do avatar URL. And then we're going to need to do the last one, which is language tag. So we'll come in here, right click, add a child node, and add in a, if I remember correctly, go to control, go in here and do a, let me find it really quick, menu button or an option button. I think it's going to be an option button for us. And we'll just go like this and make it nice and medium sized. Now I'm going to need to expand where this panel is. So we'll have to move our group members over here. So we'll grab that. And I still haven't quite filled that part out, but that's okay. We'll take a look at that in a little bit. We'll just pull that over here for now. When we do our group stuff under their option section, what we can do is come in here and just add in some items. So we could do something like EN, we could do something like, or actually English, and we'll say Spanish, and then Japanese. And you can put any different ones that you want, but in my case, I'm just going to choose these three. So when you do this, you can also add in a small text right here. We'll right click, add in a label, and we'll just bring it down here and just say language like that. And now we should be able to come in here, make this just a touch bit bigger. We're always running out of space on these screens. We'll that, right click, add in a button like so, and we'll go ahead and click and type submit that. And then we're going to add one more. And then I'm going to change this to edit group button like that. And then I'm going to go here, button down, copy this. And we'll scroll all the way down to the bottom. And I'm just going to rename this guy. And basically what this is going to allow me to do is it's going to allow me to have a panel. So that way you guys have a panel for your own future use. You guys could just take it and use it. So comma, for the name, I'm going to type get node, and we will get a line edit like so. And we're going to pass in edit. I believe it's just group / edit group / group name dot text, comma, and then we're going to do whether or not our stuff is open. So option button. So that's going to be all of this, basically copy and paste. And then we're going to go not option button. toggle. So we'll do, I believe the type is checkbox, like so. And then we'll change this from edit group name to close open group dot. And then we need to find a state parameter here. So my guess is if we take a look at it and we do our button pressed, it looks like is the one we're looking for. So dot button pressed, comma, and then we're going to be able to pass in a description. So we'll grab this bit here, copy it, and paste. And then we'll change this from group name to group description dot text, comma, and then avatar URL. So same thing, paste avatar URL, comma, space, and we have our language tag. Now our language tag is actually an option button, right? So that matters. So that's going to be a bit different. You can see it is a string value here. So what we'll do is we'll come down here and we'll say var selected option is equal to paste, and then we'll change this to an option button, and we'll change this to an option button like that, and we'll go dot. And if I remember correctly, option button has selected, and selected is how you select the different ones, right? So we can come in here and just go selected like that, and that's going to return back a integer. So if you hover over it, you can see it's going to return an integer. Now we can just go switch on selected option, and based off of the different cases, so case 0 colon break like that, and then we'll just copy these guys and paste them twice like so. And then we can do 1 and 2. And that's going to pretty much be all of our cases. Now, if we choose a case 0, we know that that's going to be English. So we'll say string choice is equal, actually language choice is equal to quote. So we're just going to set it as none for right now. Case 0, we know that that's English. So we'll do language choice is equal to en. If I remember correctly, is the English one. And then we'll just copy this, paste, and paste. So now what we can do, we can come in here and say case 1 is Spanish, I believe, or case 1 is going to be Spanish. So I forget if it's Espanol is the I believe it's ES. So we'll do EN, ES, and then Japanese, I think it's JA. So we'll go with JA like that. And then default. So if nothing is chosen, it's going to be language choice is equal to empty because they didn't choose one. And then we'll type break that. And I'm going to want to format this. So Control Shift P, format document, and that will format my entire document. That way everything's nice and formatted and it looks good. Now we'll come over all the way over here and we'll type language choice, comma, and then that should be everything to go. So something else that we should do while we're here is we'll just hit enter, 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 and enter, just to make it a little bit easier to read for anybody who wants to use this later. They're not going to be lost as to where everything is. It just kind of fits nice within our little function call, if that makes sense. So now what we can do is we're going to be doing our current selected group, so that's fine. And when we select our group, so if I hit Control F and I go find where our current selected group is, we're also going to need to go and update those interface values with the information about that group. So basically what we can do is pull all of this information here, copy it, come up here, paste, and then get rid of all of these guys here. So I'm going to middle click, drag down like that, and backspace twice, semicolon, space, equals, and then I'm going to say group dot, and then from there I can come up with what I want it to be. So I'm going to type name here. I'm going to type, let's see, it is going to be in here. It will be, if it's open, Here, it's going to be description, and here it's going to be avatar URL. Language choice, since it doesn't technically exist, we need to do the exact same thing that we did here, but up there. So something that we could do is expand this into a function call, but I'm not that worried about it right now. So we'll just grab this bit of code here, copy it, bring it up here, we'll paste it. And then what we'll do is we'll just flip based off of what the group.language tag is. And then we can come in here and change this to, instead of string, we can grab our option button. So go like this, copy it. I think I'll do int like that, and we'll start that off at 0, or I guess -1 in this case. And then I will paste, and I'll do option button dot selected, I believe was the value, not selected. And since this is a line edit, it needs to be an option button. So we'll grab this, paste that. My apologies, this is a little bit less organized than my standard, but that's because I called an audible halfway through recording this. But I feel like this is going to be a better option for you guys, and it'll make things a little bit better. So we'll do language choice like that, and then we'll basically just flip these cases. So we'll just grab EN, ES, JA, and then default is going to be -1. And then we'll change this to 2, 1, and 0. And that way, now when we come in here, we can just go refresh, and that's going to refresh our page here. And now we have this nice little panel here. So now I can log in as test. I can list all of the groups. So get group. I can select test 3, and you'll see that it's going to pull back that data. Now it pulled back Spanish. So we may have gotten an error here. System void, system cast, invalid, check button, to type check box. So it's actually a check box, not a check button. So we'll come over here, and it looks like it's this one, check button, not check box. I'm going to copy that, double check this one, which is also wrong, and we will refresh and attempt one more time. So we're going to submit, get group, select test 3, and you'll see that it pulls back all of that data. And now I can say, okay, I want this to be the strong warriors. We are the strong warriors. I'm going to close that group, and I'm going to say we're a Japanese group. Now, if I click submit, you'll see that I get nothing back. But if I go out here and I refresh test 3, you will see that it says the strong warriors. We are the strong warriors. Their language is Japanese, and they are no longer open. So that's really cool. And also the other side effect of that is that if we go to this group and we go to test 2 and we click submit, when we click get groups, you'll notice that the strong warriors do not come up. And that's because the way that Nakama works is when you want to list groups, we're listing just the open groups. So it's a hidden group. That's pretty much how that works.
And now you might be asking, okay, so since we made our list of our object, right, our groups actually false now, if you look at Nakama console here, you can see that it is no longer open, right? So how can we actually pull back that group? Well, that is where we can come in here and remove this to false. And now it'll list the non-open groups that are available to join. Now, we could also remove this language tag here because we no longer are in EN, we're in JA. So that's why we have to remove that. And now we can basically come in here, hit play, log in as test 2, submit, and then hit get group, and you'll see there's the strong warriors. So now I can select this group and then click join group. So now if we come back here and we refresh and we go to members, you will notice that we have test and test 2, but you'll notice there's a third state, join request. So what in the world does that mean? We've never ran into this. Well, join request means that they are not a part of the group. They want to join the group, but they are not actually a part of the group. And that is one of the really great things about having a not open group, is that you have to request to join that group and then get approved to actually join that group. And the way to do this is to actually add the user back. So the person who has admin rights to this must add that person back for them to be able to be added to the group. So how can we do that? Well, all we need to do is we need to get a list of our group members, and then we need to go ahead and add the user back. So what we can do is come in here, grab our get groups. Let's duplicate that and come down here. And actually, I'm thinking about this real quick. I'm going to do another Audible probably. Yeah, I think I got a better idea. So what we're going to do is when we get our group, we'll have a select group. And when we select our group and we get back this data, we're also going to pull back those members. I think that's going to be a better way than what I was originally going to do, which was to add the user manually, right? So what we can do is basically steal the information from here, more or less, because we kind of want to do the same thing here. And we'll go ahead and say, when we select our user group, we're going to do all of this. And then I'm going to go and fetch that specific group's information. So I'm going to paste this in here, and we're going to go current selected group dot. Let's see what we have in here. So creator ID, description, ID, max count, name, open JSON, update time. So I'm probably going to need the ID here. So I'll pull that back, and we'll do var result is equal to await client.list group users async. And then let's pass in our session. We'll have to do a capital S, comma, and then we need to pass in a group ID. So we'll just grab this guy, paste it in, do that. And you can see here, if we hit comma, we can also do a state, a limit, and a cursor. Now, a state, if we do like a 0, 1, 2, or 3, that can refer to the different types. So if you wanted to filter them out and say 0 as in people that want to join, 1 as in people who are members, 2 as in people who are admins, and 3 as in people who are super admins, you could put that state value in right there. Now, since I don't really want to worry about that, we'll just do the 2. Let's check to see where it's mad at us. It says that there's no argument given, so we'll just say comma null, because it is a question mark, which means it is nullable. I'm not worried about that. For a limit, I'll say 100. For cursor, we'll do quote, and that should do it. And now we can just do result dot group users. That should be a list. It is an IEnumerable, so that should work for us. And then we can come in here and just say text, and then do dot user dot display name, and then add child name label. That's totally fine. And then this is where things are going to change a tiny bit. So you can see here we have on select group button down. I'm going to come in here and make a quick little change here. So I don't really care if the select group button down is a thing, but what I'm going to do is I am going to add in another text here that basically is going to be the state of the user. So state label like that. And then I'm going to also add that child as well. And the state label dot text is going to be equal to, so what we can do is just come up here and go string state is equal to empty, and then I can just basically do a switch like so, and I'll switch on the item dot user state like that, and then I'll just go case colon or is equal to 0 break like that. And then I will go ahead and do state is equal to add me. And the state's going to be super admin like that. And then I'm going to come in here, copy this, I'm going to paste it 3 times, and we're going to go case 1, case 2, case 3. And for the state for this one is going to be admin. This is going to be member, and this will be join request, like that. And by default, we're going to default them to 3, just in case. So the default will be state is equal to join request. Now, actually, we should probably do error, because if it's ever not any of these, we should know. Now, then we could set our state label equal to our state, and that will solve that problem right there. That's going to add this to our HBox, and then right here with our onSelected button down, instead, I'm going to come in here. I'm going to create a new function. So public void on group user button down, like that. And I will pass in the user's I group user list group user, it looks like. So I will copy that. I will paste and say user bracket, and I'm going to pass in the item right here. So now I have access to that user, if that makes sense. And now I can just come down here where I wanted to join that group right here, and I can just type client dot add group user async, and then I can pass in my session token, comma, now I got to pass in my group, so current selected group dot id, comma, I'm going to pass in a new list, because this allows me to add multiple people. So I'm just going to add 1 for now, but I'm going to do a new list, and I'm going to go bracket and go user.user.id, like that. And there we go. So now that should allow us to add that user. So if we refresh this, in theory, it should just work. So now we'll come in here, we'll do test, get group, select group, and it didn't put it in the right spot, but it is somewhat correct. So that's okay. So we'll click select group, which should not be called select group, but that's okay. Let's take a look, refresh this, and you will see they are now a member. Awesome. And now we can actually fix this little bit of code that's broken here and come up here and say, first things first, if their state, here's the button, we'll say add user. And we will actually come in here, and instead of doing all of this, if item.user, or I guess it would just be item.state is equal to, I believe the state is 3, then show this bit of stuff here. If not, I don't need that additional data. So that should just solve that problem. So now you'll see if I refresh this, and also we got to fix one more thing I almost forgot. Let me go back to here, and right here, instead of doing group VBox container, we actually have a section under group members VBox container. So we'll do that. So group members, members VBox container. We'll refresh that, and then we'll go ahead and do submit, get group, select group, and you'll see that we have our information right here. Now it has test display name, 1 as a member. And that's I spelled member wrong, so that's my fault. That's always how I do it. I'm kind of dumb when it comes to spelling. And they're both named test display name, so that works perfectly for us. Now, I did spell member wrong, so let me get rid of that extra E. I believe it's member. There we go. So that's pretty much how you add people to hidden groups. So now the question is, how can you promote, demote, delete, and kick users? So in order to do that, what we need to do, we need to create 4 new buttons, right? Because we need one for promote, kick, demote, and ban. So let's grab our join group. Let's duplicate that guy. Let's duplicate another one, duplicate another one, and duplicate one more. Now, the first one, we're going to come in here and we're going to call it promote, like that. Then we're going to do demote. I think I should probably add user at the end just so that it makes it easier for us to find.
And then it's going to be kick and then ban user like that. Now I'm going to grab the title here and just figure out where this button came from. Submit. I don't know. So we'll just get rid of that. We'll go ahead and drag this, promote user, demote user. Let's copy that. Control V, demote user, kick user. Copy that, paste, spacebar, and ban user. And there we go. So what we can do is we can do one of two ways. We can either do like a user to manage text box, or we can put the user's name in there and then get back that user's information. And that might just work fine. Or we could go in and make it so that on our group members, we can select the user and then promote them. So what I think we'll do is I think we'll go the group members route just because it's going to look nicer and it's going to set you guys up for a more future-proof video. So we'll come in here and we'll scroll down here and we will find where our add user asynchronous call is. I believe it's right. Let's see, on group user button down, add group user right here. So you can see we're pulling back this user ID. What we could also do is we could pass in their state as well. Now, unfortunately, we probably need to clear all the stuff that's under this and then rerun this bit of code. I'm just thinking it through real quick. Let's go comma int state like that. And then we'll just say if state does not equal, I believe it's 4 for when a user wants to be added right here. So we'll actually get rid of this right here. It's 3. So we'll say if state does not equal 3, then do this, else. Then we'll do our stuff. Actually, we don't even need to do that. I think we could just do this. And then we could create a global variable for this guy here. So we'll scroll up to the top and say private this currently selected user. And we can also make this private because there's no reason for anyone to ever actually need to connect to this. I don't know why I made it public earlier, but there's just no reason for that. Now, if we scroll down here, we can come in here and say currently selected user is equal to our user as well. And that'll basically allow us to pull back that currently selected user. And that should make things a bit easier for later when we're doing our stuff. Now, when we add a user right to this, we should actually come in here and refresh our user group set. So I'm going to put brackets here and I'm going to rerun this bit of code here. So since we're going to rerun this bit of code here, we need to also delete all of the children underneath the object for our group members. So if we find where our group members are, it's right here under group members. We can basically just come in here. You can see this is going to set these guys. That's fine. And then here is where it starts adding in the group members. So we'll come in here and we'll basically delete everything under this VBox container here. So we'll just come in here, go up here, paste, remove child, and I'm going to remove the first index. And that should, well, it's going to require a node. So how about, let's see if we have a remove meta, remove child. So we will need a node of some description. So let's do this, copy, paste, get child. And we could pull back that first index because there should only be one thing underneath this. And what we should also do, actually what I'll do, yeah, this will work. So then what I'll do is I'll say if this dot get children count, get child count does not equal 0, then go ahead and do this bit of code here. And that'll basically allow me to keep track of all of that information. So basically, the idea is we're going to get back our child count. We're going to make sure that we have more than one, right? We have to have at least one for this to work. Then, if so, we're going to pull back that element. We're going to delete it so that way it gets rid of it, and then we'll re-add it down here. And now we'll also need to pass in their state. So if you remember, we have our state right here. So we'll do item.state, and that will solve that little issue right there. And that should, in theory, set us up pretty well. And now we need to actually hook up these buttons. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll right-click disconnect, right-click connect. We will copy this guy, go to connect. We'll scroll all the way down and we'll hit public void paste, and we will drop that guy in there. Do the same thing for Demote, right-click disconnect, right-click connect. We're going to copy all of that. We're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom. Public void paste, bracket, bracket, and then one more time, right click, disconnect, right click, connect. We will copy this guy and scroll all the way back down once again, like that. And then last one. So we'll disconnect, right click, connect, and then we will copy this, connect, and go all the way back down once again. And there we go. Now, when we want to promote, demote, kick, or ban a user, it's actually really easy. To be able to promote a user, all you need to do is get a user and then promote that user asynchronously. So we'll type await client.promote group user asynchronous, and it's going to ask for a session. And it's going to ask for a group ID. So we'll say currently selected group.id, comma, and then it's going to ask for an IEnumerable of strings. So it's going to be like a list of strings. Now, if you remember, we did something like that right here when we did our add group to user asynchronously. So we'll do that, and then we'll basically pull back our current selected user.id. User.id, like that. And that'll basically allow us to promote a user. And the beauty of this is it's very similar on how to do this for all of them. So demoting a user, the exact same way. We'll just paste it, and paste it. And then we'll say demote user group asynchronous, which it's mad at us really quick. My guess is await can only be used within asynchronous. That's fine. I'll fix that in a second. Demote, kick user, and then ban user group asynchronous. Now, something that's interesting is that the GD script edition of this doesn't actually have this ban user capability. And I'm not sure why, but for some reason it got rid of it at some point in time. So weirdly enough, the C# edition does have it. So we will use it. So we're going to paste, and save. So the beauty of this is if we did everything correctly, it should, in theory, just work and be a pretty decent little system here. And if we want to, when we promote our users, we can actually come up here and we have their state label here. So what we could do is we could do the same thing that we do here, which is add group asynchronously. We're eliminating this. So we're going to need to call this on group selected button down right here, right after the currently selected user, and then pass in currently selected group like that. And then we can basically copy this and paste it right here. And all that's going to do is just make everything a little bit more reactive. So that way we don't need to redo our load every single time we do this. So now we could actually come in here, refresh this, and if all of the jumbled code that I came up with actually works, we're going to have a pretty cool little system on our hands. So let's go ahead and submit, get my groups or not. I have an error here, and that's because I took a stop from doing the tutorial. So the Docker desktop is no longer running. So I'm just going to start that bad boy up, so that it should work now. And that's the beauty of Docker, is that you can close things and reboot them, and we're not going to lose anything. So this all is 100% bootable, right? I could back this image up and put it up on the cloud, and it would just work for me to have multiplayer out in the cloud. And I will go through that later, but that's something that's really cool about this. So now if I refresh this and I try it again,
you'll see if I go into submit, we got that. Get group, there's the strong warriors of my group. We'll hit select group and you'll see that we have 2 people. Now you'll see that this button says add user. Technically it's select user because they're already a member, but that's okay. So we'll hit add user and it didn't quite delete everything as expected. So I'm not sure what's up with that. But if we click promote user, you'll see that now we have an admin right here. Now it's a little bit harder to see if I don't change the user management panel here. So let me go in here and let me find test 2, which is the user that we're doing this, and just go test 2. We'll save that. That way we have an account modified right there so we can just kind of better test our stuff. Now you'll notice that for some reason it did not delete the children as I expected. My guess is I'm going to have to come up with a better way to handle that. But if we do get group, select group, you'll see that we have a super admin and an admin. And now if I select my admin, you'll notice that it brought my admin up here. For some reason, it looks like it's appending it in some way. If I click demote user, you'll notice that they are now a member right here. So there's some funkiness going on here. Now, if I kick user, you'll notice that if we refresh this, and we'll fix that later. But if I refresh this and I click submit, get group, select, you'll see that we just have the one guy because he's been kicked out. The other guy got removed. So that's how we do promote, demote, and kick. So now if we hit stop real quick and we try to fix that issue real quick, my guess is what we need to do is come in here and do, come in here. Instead of get child, we can just do for each bar item in, and then we can do this dot get children like that. And that should pass back a node, an array of nodes. And then all we can do is just come in here and delete them. So item dot queue free. And that should solve that problem. I probably should have came up with that solution earlier, but I wasn't really thinking. I'm kind of working off the cuff here, so it's a little bit different than normal. So let me try that and see if that works. So if I go test, get group, and then I do test 2, submit, get group, select this group, and then do join group. When I do, well, if I don't have an error, oh, I didn't select the group. That's why. Okay, that's fine. So we'll go in here where it says test 2. We'll select the group and then we will join the group. And now if we go over here and we select the group, you'll see that we have this other person. If we click add user, they should have switched over. Let me see. There's no errors other than the one that we got, which is the null reference, but that's just my fault. Let's see what happens if we refresh. There might be something weird on my end that I might have done wrong here. So get group, select, join request, add user. So this isn't adding the user. So let's take a look at our code. We must have done something weird here on get user group int state. So if the state does not equal 3, what is the state? That's the question. Is it 3? Or... oh, if the state is equal to 3, I'm dumb. It needs to be flipped. That's why. Okay, so we'll refresh that and we'll try it again. So now we should be able to go submit, get group, select, and then add user. And they are now a member. Now it didn't refresh like expected, but that's okay. If we click promote, you'll see they are an admin. If we demote, they are now a member. And that is basically how we could do that. Now, weirdly enough, it still says test display name. I think I'm pulling back their user identification or something because this didn't pull back the right information or it didn't save properly. That's okay, but at least it's still working. So now if we do ban user, you'll see that they get taken off. And if we come in here and we go into the group, the strong warriors members, and you will see that they got removed. So that's
pretty much how you actually work within groups inside of Nakama. Now, at this point, you should have a pretty good understanding of how this section actually operates. I'm pretty sure that goes through most, if not all, of the functionality here. The next big feature that we have to talk about is chatting. So Nakama has a real-time chatting system that allows for groups, private, direct messages, and a dynamic chat room. So basically, you can have a really cool little chatting system that you can actually talk to your friends with. So let's go ahead and figure out a way to build this out. Now, we are kind of slightly running out of space here, so we might have to use this upper right-hand portion here because you can see the little line right here where the UI elements get cut off. So we'll have to bring it up here and build it out. So what I'm going to do is we're going to come up here. I'm going to minimize this guy, right click, add a child node. Let's add in a panel and let's call it chat. Now I'm going to right click, add in a child node, and we're going to add in a line edit like so. I'm going to also grab this guy, bring it over here like this, and I'm going to go ahead and make it about, I don't know, about this big, give or take. Hopefully that'll be enough space. If not, we're going to be really space constrained here, so we'll see. So we'll put this guy right about here, and we will put the placeholder text as chat name. And this is going to be for dynamic chats, right? So dynamic chats are chats that are just made using some kind of ID. And basically, you need to have that ID to create this chat. So temporarily, we'll use this as a way of getting that chatting working. We're going to right click, add another child node, and we'll add in a button. And then I'm going to make it about, I don't know, about this big, give or take. We're going to duplicate that button, pull it down, duplicate it one more time, and then we will pull it down. Now we're going to need to join a chat, basically join a group chat or join a direct chat. So in the button, we'll say join chat. This one, join group chat. And then last but not least, join direct chat like that. Now we will rename these. So copy, paste, and I'm going to get rid of that space there. I'm going to grab a join group chat. Same thing. Come in here, name this, get rid of the space. And then last one, we'll copy this one and we will paste it like so. Get rid of this and get rid of that. And there we go. Now, something else that we need to add is I'm going to right click, add a child node, and I'll add in a tab container. And a tab container is going to allow me to have tabs at the top of my little container here. And I'll just kind of make it about this big. I'm going to right click my tab container here, and I'm going to add in a thing to contain all of the text. So if we go to our control node, you'll see that they have a text edit here. So we'll go ahead and bring that in as well. And you'll see that it has a text edit. So this is kind of how the tab container is going to operate. So we'll just pull this guy, I don't know, about up to here-ish. We'll make it nice and set up like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and right click my chat, add in a child node. And we need a way to actually bring in our chat. So I'll do a line edit like so. Bring it down here and we'll make it about this big. And then I will right click, add in a button, and we'll make it about this big, give or take, and I will put the words pointer like that. So that way I have something that just kind of says submit effectively. And we'll make this a little bit bigger as well. Now for the button here, I'll just say submit chat. For the line edit, I will say chat text. And that should be everything that we're going to need for this little panel here. So now we need to actually set up our code for all of this. So what we'll do is we'll hook up these buttons real quick. So we're going to go into node, button down. I'm going to copy this guy, connect, and you guys have seen this a million times, but I will once again do it again. Now you'll notice that I'm going to do a new region here, and the region is going to be chat, and then I'm going to end that region. And we'll say public void paste, bracket, bracket. And then I'm going to do the same for all of these buttons. So I will be right back. You guys can watch me do it, but I will try to speed this up a little bit.
And that should pretty much do it. So in order to join a chat, it's actually pretty simple. All we need to do, you need to get a hold of your user that you're trying to connect to. So we'll say var user is equal to await client dot get user asynchronously, and then we need to pass in our session. As always, we need to pass in an ID of a person that we want to pull. In my case, I don't really care about that, so I'll just pass in empty. And actually, I think it's an IEnumerable, so we might need to pass in a new bracket like that, and then we'll pass in a new bracket, but this time we will go ahead and bring in our username. So I will pass in the username of the person that we are going to chat with, which will be where this guy comes in right here. I'm going to name this as selected chat like that. And then I'll just come in here and do get node bracket line edit bracket chat slash selected chat dot text. Like that. Now, this is going to be mad because it's expecting us to do this, I assume. Or maybe not. I wonder if I could just pass in. I think I could just pass in. And it shouldn't get mad at me. There we go. And we will also need to, if we hit comma, you can see it does Facebook IDs and things like that. We don't need any of that, so we'll just go ahead and do that. And that should get us the user back that we're looking for. And now all we have to do is say if user dot users dot size or dot count is greater than 0, then let's go do all of this, because we don't want to run any of this code if it's not useful to us. So in order to join a chat, all we need to do is we need to type await socket dot join chat asynchronously, and then we can pass in a target. Now in our case, since we're going to be doing a direct chat, it's going to be the user's name, right? Or the user ID. So what we can do is just go user dot users bracket 0 dot ID. And that'll pull back the single user that we need, comma, and then we can pass in the type of channel it is. In our case, it's a direct message. We're going to be directly messaging somebody. So we'll do that. And then we can choose if it's going to be persistent or not. So in our case, I think it should be. So we'll say true because we want it to stick around, and it should be hidden. So we'll say true because the chat needs to be hidden. We don't want people to be able to just pull that information from the internet. So we want to kind of hide it from other people. And false because it's going to be a, publicly used chat here. So you'll see that we do have an issue here. Cannot apply index with IEnumerable. Cannot apply indexing. Let's see. Is this not a list? It's an IEnumerable. So what I'll do is I'll just use link. Since we are using C#, we could just pull first or default like that. And that would just pull back the one that we're looking for. And then a dot, and you can see all the different things. So we'll just do .id like that. There we go. Now that's going to hook us up to that chat, but we also need to keep track of which chat we're attached to. So let's go ahead and do iChannel. Actually, while we're here, let's just make it public because it's going to be easier in the future if we throw this up at the top. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. We'll come up here and do private iChannel current chat like that. And we'll scroll all the way down to the bottom and we'll say current chat is equal to await socket join asynchronously. And there we go. Now, once we have this, we need to actually be able to send that data across. So you can see we have on submit chat button down, right? That's that little submit chat button. So when you want to submit a chat, it's actually really easy. All we need to do is come in here and do await socket.write channel message asynchronously. And then we need to pass in the ID of the channel that we're going to be doing. So we're going to do our current chat.id, comma, and then we can pass in whatever data we want. Now this needs to be a string. So we should probably come up with some kind of object that we can actually use for this. And it's completely up to you. You can actually do whatever you would like. Now you could, just come up with string data or something like that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and create an object specifically for this. So we'll come in here. We will go ahead and hit plus, and we'll say chat message.cs. And then I'm going to go class chat message, and it's going to be a public class. I don't know why it didn't default to that, but that's fine. And we'll go ahead and pass in string message public string user. We're going to pass in the, let me see, probably the ID. And then we'll probably pass it a type parameter. So we'll just do like that. And since it's public, we'll go with a capital T right there. Now that means that we can actually build this object. So we'll say chat message is equal to a new chat message like that. We'll do bracket bracket, and then we can kind of fill out this object. Now, when we want to fill out this object, it's really easy. First things first, our message is going to be equal to, right, our get node chat, or I guess it's going to be a, if we look at our chat text, it's a line edit. So line edit like that. And then we'll say chat slash chat text dot text like that, and that'll pull back that data specifically for that. And now we can pass in our ID as well, which our ID is going to be something in the future. I guess it'll just be our current chat.id for right now. We'll probably have to go in and change it because since we have tabs, we're going to need to pass in the chat that we're trying to have a conversation with. But I have a feeling that we're going to need to keep track of all that in a list eventually, but we're not quite there yet. So let's go ahead and do that. And then I'm going to go with type is equal to, in this case, 0. Now we probably should make this into an enum, but for right now, we'll just do that. And so now we can just go chat message dot to JSON like that. And that'll pass that in as JSON. And then we should be good. I don't think there's anything else we actually need to send. But that's how we send a message. But now the question is, okay, how do we get that data? And that is where signals, once again, we'll save our bacon a little bit here. So we'll scroll all the way up to the top to our login code. So when we press our login code here, we're going to need to connect our actual channel with messages with our channel, right? So we'll say socket dot received channel message plus equal on channel message like that. And then we'll just select this, click on the little light bulb, and then generate that method. Now I'm going to pull this method down all the way down to our chat section because it just makes sense to have that in our region here so that it all just kind of stays nice and contained. So when a message comes in, we need to basically parse that data. So the beauty of it is we're going to be able to do it pretty easily. Since it's already JSON data, we can basically just convert it. So you can say chat message is equal to message.content, right? I guess it would be message.message. That should be a string, correct? Yes. So then we basically can just parse that data using JSON parse, right? JSON parser dot from JSON like that. And then we can just pass this guy in like that. And then we should be able to just do bracket bracket and do chat message. And that should cast it as a chat message like that. And it looks like it's a little mad at me because this is message. So we'll just do current message like that. It's still mad at us. It says API does not contain definition for message. So let's go dot content. So it is dot content. I thought it was, but I wanted to make sure. So there we go. And that's going to convert that to a current message. And now with our type parameter, we can actually come in and validate what that data is going to be. So the beauty of us passing in that type parameter allows us to come in here and say, if current message dot type is equal to 0, then do this bit of information. Because just in case we get a different type of message. So the beauty of the message system is that you can actually subscribe to different types of messages. So if you wanted to, you could maybe pass some player information between each other locally, right? So peer-to-peer by using the messaging system. You could also use it for doing stuff like trading or things like that. You could pass in different messages. That's why I'm doing it this way. Technically, a type 0 is not necessary, but I just want to make sure that we have a good, solid value here. Now, since we have this tab container here, I'm going to need to pull back this text edit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go get node, text edit, chat / tab container / and then we need to pass in whatever our content could possibly be. So I'm going to go here, space plus our current message dot. Oh, we don't actually have we have ID. So we'll do ID like that. Dot text is plus equals our current message dot message like that. Now, we may want to pull back some additional information here because remember, this is a message. So let's actually do this. Plus equals current message dot user plus quote like that plus str, the string right here, and then we'll also pass in a plus quote / n to give us a new line at the end. So that way our message is actually carriage return. Now, something that we should probably look at instead of doing it this way is by doing a dot text plus equals and do $ quote bracket like that. And I'm going to minimize this so we can have a bit more space here. So if we do bracket and then bracket, then we can get rid of this, and then do bracket like that. And that will give us a little bit easier to read message right there. And it's going to be a little bit easier for us to work with. And now, in theory, this should be able to send messages back and forth between people if we've done everything at least somewhat correctly. So let's go ahead and test this out. So let's go in here. And actually, this isn't going to work because we have this text edit here. So now that I'm thinking about it, because we have this section here where we're grabbing our tab container current message ID, we need to actually create a tab for that as well. I didn't think about that. So what I'm going to do is just create a tab. If it doesn't exist, then we could just create a tab. I think that that's probably going to be the easiest way, because if I go and I fetch something and it doesn't exist, then we're going to have a problem on our hands. So what I'll do is I'll grab this and say, if this dot, is there a dot exists? Or maybe I have to go, actually here, let's do this. Dot or null. That works. Dot get node or null. And then we'll just pass in the current message path ID like that. Does not equal null, then, or actually does equal null. We'll do does equal null, then we'll go ahead and add a child that will be this object. And what it's going to be is I'm going to go get node tab container, this guy dot add child, and we'll just go new text edit like that. And we'll go parentheses, bracket, name is going to be the current message ID like this. And that will allow me to have that object as a thing. And I think that should work pretty well. And that's going to allow me to have that message. And then if it doesn't exist, then it will create that tab. And hopefully, if we're lucky, this might actually work. Let's go ahead and refresh. And let's try it. So we'll submit, we'll click test 2, submit, and I have 2 errors. So system object reference not set to an instance of an object. So what are you screaming about? Right here on channel receive message. I'm not sure. Socket doesn't exist yet. Did socket not get created yet? Let's see. No, because we have to do join to create a socket. For some reason, I thought we created a socket. So it looks like we'll need to create a socket so we can create that connection. So let's just grab this bit of code here. So we'll just go these two guys. We'll copy it because this is only when we have a message and we don't want to do that. We want to be able to have that socket connection at all times. So we'll just do this. And we'll need to come up with a way to refactor some of the code down here to be a different socket connection, and that's totally fine. So we'll do this first, and then we'll refresh, because right now we're not worried about the multiplayer section. We'll just come in and clean it up later. So submit test2, submit test, join, test2, join, test, send. Okay, so that object should exist because we did click join. So it's saying right here, so it's getting the channel message as expected. Chat tab container. I wonder if it's because of this extra little line right there. Let's try that. Refresh. Let's try it one more time. Hopefully we can get this to fire off properly. Test2, submit, test, join direct chat, test2, join direct chat, test, send. And we got another error, debug 4, native call null. Caller thread cannot call this thread function in this node. Use call deferred. So you can see it's mad at 472. So if we look at this error here, the way to read this is pretty simple. Basically, it's mad because at line 472, we're trying to call something that should be called deferred. So it is right here. This guy here, it's mad. It's saying that we need to call that deferred. So my guess is that this area needs to be called deferred completely. So let's go ahead and try doing that and just following what it says. So I'm going to cut all of this. And if I remember correctly, we did a call deferred right here. You can see how it does it right here. We'll basically just do that, but down here where our chat is located. We'll call deferred like that. And we need to pass in a name of a method. So we'll just say private void on channel message deferred like that. And I'm not quite sure what all it's going to need. Probably the current message, judging by all of the underlines that we have here. So we'll just pass in a current message like that. And then we'll just pass in name of on message deferred, comma. And then for the arguments, we'll just pass in our message. Or actually, it'll be our current message. I'm sorry. And there we go. Now it might get mad at us because it's not a Godot variant. So this is a really annoying problem that Godot has, where you can't call something deferred with a custom value. So we have to come in and basically cheat this. So we're going to need to decompose this object into its base parts and then use it. So you can see here we have ID, user, and message, it looks like. So we'll say string ID, comma, string message, comma, string user, like that. And then we'll just say current message dot ID, comma, current message dot message, and then current message dot user, like that. And then that's going to call these guys. So what I'll do is I'll just change this to ID, 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 user, and then message, like that. And there we go. So now, in theory, we could try this one more time and see what happens if we attempt to do this here. Hopefully, once again, it works. Test2, test, join direct chat. Whoops. Test2, join direct chat, test, send. And we got another error. Goodness, criminy, this is not great. So you can see we have a invalid cast object tab container to a text edit, and it looks like the same issue here. So at least we got farther along than we did last time. You can see here it's mad because we're trying to do a tab container like that. So we'll just do that. We'll copy this, change that, and then let's try that and see what happens. At this point, we've had enough errors for today. I think we can stop doing that. So we'll hit submit. We'll hit test2. We'll do test, join direct chat, test2, join direct chat, test, and send. And you'll notice that we now have a value here, which is gigantic. So that's not great. We do have some errors, but it does seem like it somewhat worked. So it's saying object reference not set to an instance of an object, native call, node not found relative to root. So the reason why this is because the data we're passing back is probably not a good idea. We're passing the unique ID of the chat itself, and I think we need to pass in the ID of the actual user instead, because it's going to be a little bit easier to work with. So since we're passing back the user, if we take a look, well, actually, I think this is null, isn't it? Let's see. Yeah, when we submit our chat, it's null. So what I'm going to do is go comma user is equal to session.username, like that. And then I'll just pass in, instead of doing what we did before where we went and fetched the ID, let's fetch the actual username instead. So we're not going to use this. We'll just say user instead, because that should be a little bit easier to read as well for the user. So we'll say user, and that'll pretty much eliminate the need for ID for right now, but that's okay. We'll try that again. Submit, test 2, submit, test, join, test 2, join, test, send. You'll see that we both get a message called test. Awesome. So now we have it working. So test message, send. And you'll see that we also get this, which is not great. So we are going to need to compare off of some unique value, because you can see that it separated these two. Even though it's a communication between us, it's a problem. So we're going to need to come up with a way to actually cheat this a tiny bit. So that's something that we're going to have to look at. So let's take a look at our code real quick and let's debug this guy. So I think our best method is going to be going in and actually building out our tab system properly, because I was going to show you guys just, oh, look, it works, right? And I did show that it works, not quite how we wanted it to, but it does work, right? But we need to actually build out this tab system properly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a new object here. So I'm going to hit plus and I'm going to call it chat channel.cs. That's .vs, not CS, Mitch. So that .cs, there we go. And we'll say class chat channel. We'll go to the front, say public. And then we'll basically pass in a few values. Now it's going to be pretty easy. It's going to be string channel, and we'll make that a capital C because it will be a public string. And then we're going to make it a public string label, like that. And basically that's going to allow us to have a chat channel object. And now we can come in here and create a list of them. So we'll come in here and we'll say private list of chat channel, like that. Chat channels is equal to a new list of chat channels, like that. And that's basically going to allow us to have a list of these chat channels that we can work with. And I know that it seems kind of weird to do this, but trust me when I say that this is going to be useful, because it's going to allow us to actually have different labels and things like that that we can work with here. So I'm going to scroll down to the bottom and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say call deferred this. If this doesn't exist, instead of just adding it as a child and then naming it the user, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to name it the user. That's fine. But I'm also going to do is I'm going to come in here, bracket, like this. And I'm going to come in here and say chat channels.add, because I'm adding a new chat channel. And I need to add a new chat channel, bracket, like so, where the label is going to be equal to the user and the ID, which I think I called it channel. I think I should probably change this to ID instead. That just makes more sense. The ID is going to be equal to the ID of the chat. And now when I do this, I can just go and fetch that channel instead of going and fetching the node. It should make things a little bit better off than doing what we were doing. And now that we have it added to our channel list, what we can do is we can basically just pull back that element and then set its ID equal to that value, if that makes sense. And the reason why is because I want the label to be the username of the person, but I want us to be able to use their ID as like a unique key almost to that. So what we can do is we could probably use a dictionary, to be honest with you. I'm kind of doubling back on some of my thoughts, but I don't want to go through and build a whole dictionary, even though the lookup time would be O of 1 instead of O of n. I just don't think it's necessary for the tutorial sake. So we'll say chat channels dot where x pointer x dot ID is equal to the ID, and then we'll pass back that object and say dot, and that should bring back just one, and we'll say first dot label, and that'll pull back that information right there. So I'll just get that and then paste it right here. And then in theory, that should work because it's a little bit messy, but in theory, that should operate properly. So let's try that. And my luck is going to be that it's not going to work, but we'll try it. So we'll hit submit, test 2, submit. We're going to do test, join direct chat, test 2, join direct chat, test, and send a message. You'll see that we have test 2, send a message, and it did not work, unfortunately. It did add the extra tab there, but it did work somewhat properly. I do believe that the title needs to be different, but at least it is somewhat correct. Let's go ahead and take a look at the code. We are getting an extra one, and the reason why is because it's getting node or null ID right here. So instead of doing this, what we can do is just say chat channels dot, and then we can come in here and say any x pointer x dot ID is equal to ID, like that, and then go like that, and then we can get rid of this. And that's basically just saying if any of these do not, or if any of these exist, then run this bit of code. So we'll say not, and that should solve that problem. So that should pretty much do it for direct messages, but we do need to come up with a way to maybe pass in our own username. So that way we can just kind of keep track of who is direct messaging each other. Maybe that would be a better route than what I'm approaching right now, because basically I'm passing in my session username saying this is the person that's doing the chat, which is fine. But if that username is equivalent to my own username, I almost need to, when I join a direct chat, basically name that chat my chat's name, if that makes sense. So now the question might be, okay, how can I get my previous messages? Because you'll notice that when we refresh this and we join a chat, it doesn't actually pull back that data that you would expect. So you can see here, test. If I go test 2 and I submit and I join direct chat, you'll see that there's no additional data in here. And if I go test and I say test 2 and I join direct chat, you'll see that nothing really happens. So what can I do to help with making this a little bit better? Well, what we can do is we can actually pull back all of that data on boot up. And the easiest way to do that is to sub to your friends' channels. So I'm going to create a function down here called private void sub to friends' channels, like that. And basically what we'll do is we're going to list our friends asynchronously, and we're going to go ahead and pull back all of their channels. So we'll say bar result is equal to await client dot list friends asynchronously. And I'm going to pass in my session token like that. It is going to be a little mad at me, and it looks like there's no argument given with the required parameter state. So if we hit comma, you'll see that they require a state. We'll just pass in null. So that way that gets handled. And it's still mad at us because it says that we need to pass in limit as well. So for a limit, we'll pass in 100. Cursor will pass in empty. And there we go. So what this is going to do is it's going to allow us to pull back all of our friends, and then we can basically list their channels. So we'll say for I for each var item in result dot friends. And then we basically can go and add in our information. So we can say var channel is equal to await socket dot join chat asynchronously, like that. We could pass in our item dot user.id, like that. Then we could pass in the type. So the type is going to be a direct message chat because it is a direct message chat. And then we can pass in our persistence, which is going to be true. And then we're going to pass in true. And then we'll pass in false for the private portion of it. And then we can come in here and basically create our channel that we did that last time. So you remember we did that up here basically, right? Where we created a different chat here. So we'll just come in here and say chat channels.add new chat channel, like that, bracket. And then we can just pass in the different data here, because if I remember correctly, it's chat channel, it's ID and label. So ID is equal to, and we could pass in our ID. So that's going to be our channel.id, comma, and then we can pass in our label, which is going to be our item dot user dot display name, like that. And there we go. And then we can pass in our text edit, right? So that way we can actually add it to our thing, kind of like what we did up here where we actually did our chat right here, where we added our tab. So it's basically the exact same thing. So we'll come in here and we'll basically say var current edit is equal to text edit dot new text edit, like that. And then we'll say current edit dot name is equal to our item dot user dot name, like that. And then we'll come in and we'll add that to our panel. So if you remember, we did that right up here where we added it to our child right here. So we'll just go ahead and copy this bit here, copy, come down here, paste, and then we can basically just do add child our current text edit, like this. There we go. And then we need to actually get all of the messages that happened beforehand. And that is where we need to create a function called list messages to do it. So remember, when we're actually creating the text here, but we need to actually get the data back. So how do we do that? Well, we can just type current edit dot text is equal to await list messages, like that. We could pass in our channel, like that. And you'll notice that we don't actually have this data here, and that's okay. Don't worry about it. We'll go ahead and create this in about 2 seconds. Now, something else that we need to do is we need to actually have the ability to change our tabs, right? So let's come in here and let's bind that data. So we'll say get node tab container chat / I believe it's just, let's take a look, chat / tab container dot, and if we take a look, they should have a change tab or something to that effect. Tab changed right there, and we'll plus equals bracket parentheses pointer, and we'll actually call on chat tab changed, like that. And we're going to pass in our channel.id, like that. Now it might look like a mess, but trust me, it's going to be okay. So we'll first make our list messages. So public or private void list messages, like that. And then we'll pass in the channel that we are going to be doing. So you can see here, we're passing in the I channel. So we'll say I channel, and we'll bracket. Now this needs to be async because we are awaiting that data. And since it's a void, we're actually can't await a void. It has to return some kind of data. So we'll be figuring out what that data type is in a second, because unfortunately, it's probably going to be something like string would be my guess. So we'll do string. And there we go. It might have to be a task. So we'll check. It'll probably be a task like this is going to be my guess. Because that's going to tell it to be it's going to return a string, but it's going to wait until that string is actually sent back. So you have to tell it to be a task, if that makes sense. So when we list our message, all we have to do is say var result is equal to client.list channel message async. And then we have to pass in our session token as always. And then we can do comma the channel comma limit, which is going to be 1 because there's no reason to have that. And these all are defaults. So we'll just do the 2 because we should be good with that. And then the result that we get back is going to be a API channel message list. So it's going to be a list of messages. So what we need to do is we need to kind of loop through those messages. So for each var item in result.messages like that. And that means that our item is actually a message. You can see it has the channel ID, the code, the content, the create time, group ID, all sorts of information here. So what we can do is we can now use this to our advantage. So what we'll do is we'll loop through, we will get the content of that message, and then we'll just rebuild the strings. So we'll say string text is equal to empty like that. And then we'll come in here and we'll say message, chat message is equal to item dot content. And we'll need to parse this as JSON. So we'll come in here and go JSON parser dot from JSON like that. And we'll parse that data into a message. So we'll do this. Chat message like that. And then we will come in here and append that to our text. So we'll say text plus equals message dot message. And this will just append that message that we had, but we actually need to append it in the exact same way that we're appending it in the other way. So if you remember up here, we appended the message in a very specific way. If we look at this right here, this is where we're appending that data. So let's just copy this bad boy. Let's bring this down here and let's just steal it and use it. So we'll just paste and we'll say message.user and message.message like that. And that should get us what we need. And then we can just return our text. Because it doesn't have an await, but it doesn't really need. I guess it does need an await here. So we'll do an await client list message asynchronously. And so we have some issues here, but you can see we have results, which we can get rid of because it's mad saying that we shouldn't have 2 results. I don't know why it let me do that to begin with, but there we go. And it's mad here because it says that the event handler does not take 0 arguments. Now, you can handle this one of 2 ways. You can either create an object here and just have something like tab index and then pass that in, or you could pass it an underscore just to throw that away if you want to. And now you'll see that this is mad because it says that it doesn't exist in current index, and that's fine because we haven't created this yet. But the reason why I was mad was because it was expecting us to pass in the tab that it was changing, but instead I'm going to pass in the whole channel. So that's basically why it's mad at me. Now, when we change our tab, what we'll do is we'll come in here and we'll have a function called on tab changed like this. And we'll go ahead and pass in a iChannel object like we have here. I believe it's just an iChannel. So iChannel like that. And then we'll come in here and we will go ahead and do that. That's fine. And then we'll say current chat is equal to channel. And that'll basically set up our current chat. So anytime we switch tabs, it's going to basically set that up. So more or less what we're doing here is when we boot up the app, we're going to sub to our friends' channels, or at least when we log in. And when we do, we're going to connect up all of the tab changing events and things like that. So that way it just gets handled. So that way we don't have any weirdness here. It's just already connected. And we're passing in the channel here. So that way we can actually keep track of which channel is actually on that tab, if that makes sense. We're like hooking up each channel to that tab so that we can pull back its data as needed. And then we're also fetching back the messages from that tab. And if we wanted to, we could say on tab changed. We could just say list messages as well, like this, and pass in our channel if we wanted to. And that technically would work if we just do await that as well. And then that in theory would work. And now we basically need to come up here and sub to our friends' channels so that we can actually list out our actual work here. So if we go like this, when we actually log in, so if we scroll up to the top here, when we log in, we can go ahead and just sub to our friends' channels, and that should in theory work. So let's see where we're at on this and see if it actually works out for us. So we'll come in here, we'll hit submit. You'll see that we have test display name, perfect. If we hit test 2, test display name, perfect. And well, it doesn't look like it pulled back all of the data, or maybe it did, but we just can't see it. So let's click on remote and let's go out to our chat here. Let's click on our tab container and let's click on our new test display name here, which has a scroll bar. We'll look at the inspector and it only has this little bit of text here. So I think that we might be missing some of the data that's associated with this. So let's take a look at what's going on here. So we didn't get any errors at all in our debugger, so that's a good sign. So now that means that we have to come in here and figure out where this is going wrong here. Like so, we're going to submit. That's going to bring back test display name. We'll type test, test2, test message. Okay, so we're sending our data back. And then if we hit stop, we refresh. Let's see what happens if we try to list our messages. Does the data come up properly? So submit, nothing. So we only get back the 1. So something somewhere is not happy. My guess is it has to do with fetching the message itself. So if we go and we take a look at fetching the messages, this list channel messages async, is it only pulling back 1, this int limit 1? So I wonder if that is what's going on. And because of the cursor being here, bool forward. So I really wish that the Nakama team, because if we go to definition, I wish the Nakama team would tell us the forward actually means inside of here. So now I'm going to have to go out to their documentation really quick and take a look. So unfortunately, they don't really tell us the information that we're looking for, even in the Nakama documentation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to see what happens if I say comma 100 for my limit and see if that gives me what I'm looking for. So we're going to refresh and try this one more time.
Okay, so that did pull back
the data we were looking for. You can see that this was a bunch of our test data before we did anything special. And then this is all the other data. Now it looks like it's pulling back the data that is oldest first, and then it's going back from there, which can be good. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a thing.
If we do this,
and we say false for forward, what does that do here? So if we refresh this, and then we log in, that's going to pull it backwards. So in our case, what we could do is we could pull it all backwards and then reorder it, because we might not want to get the 5,000 messages that the person had, right? We might want to only get the first, 10 or 15. So what we could do is we could get this down to like 15 false and then reorder it so it's reverse, okay? And the reason why you might be wondering why you would want to do that is because if we do it this way, we're grabbing the newest messages and the first 15 newest messages. That way we're not falling and pulling a bunch of messages that don't need to be there, if that makes sense. So what we'll do is we'll just hit dot reverse. And that is going to reverse all of our data right there. It's that easy. So now we should be able to just refresh, hit play, submit, and now we have the first 15 messages, and that's it. So if I come in here
and I log in with test 2 and I go 1, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So now we have 10 of those tests that just got sent across by test 2. When we refresh, you'll notice that we only get the ones that we just passed across. See, it didn't get the ones that were before that. It just got these ones. And that's the beauty of using link. You could just reverse that list and bam, it's done. You don't have to do anything crazy. So that works. So that's basically how we can create a very basic direct chatting system. But that's not everything that Nakama can do when it comes to chatting. The other big thing that we are allowed is to do group chatting. So in order to do group chats, we basically need to do what we've done here, but for groups, right? So pretty easy. So what we can do is when we select a group, let's just automatically join that group chat. And something else that we could do, instead of doing what we're doing here, we have join group chat. We could probably just, when we select our group, we could just join that chat. And we could probably do it so that when we start our app, we can list our groups and just set those as our chats. So we head over here, let's see if we take a look at this and you can see how we have this section here. So we're going to basically do this, but with our friends, right? So what I'm thinking is if we come in here and say var result is equal to await client.list groups async like that, we could pass in a session like that, comma, null, comma, limit of, I don't know, 100, comma, string cursor null, like that. I think that should work. Now, we already have result, right? And we're already doing for result.friends, right? But what we could do is we could actually pull this bit of code here and abstract that into a function. So I'm going to click on this little guy here, and it should allow me to extract method like that. So we'll extract method. And instead of it being called new method, we'll change the name to list add to chat like that. And we'll grab this, copy, paste. And then for the object return type, or for this object, it's going to be a IAPI friend list. So I don't know if that's going to work because this has a very specific object type. Or I guess it's going to be a IAPI. Let's see if I comment that out. It's going to be an IEnumerable of API friend. So we could just grab this, tell it to take in that, and then that should just work. Or we might have to do a list of IAPI friend. Or I guess it would be an item. So it would be just an IAPI friend. That's my fault. We'll pull that. So we're going to make it do IAPI friend, and that should just work for this. But you can see that really the only reason why we need it is because of these. So I'm wondering if we should just pass in an ID. Is that it? Is that all we need is the ID and display name? So I think what we'll do is we'll change this to be, so let's see what this takes in, string and string. So we'll say string ID, comma, string display name like that. And then we'll just grab this guy, copy and paste, and then we'll just grab ID right here like that. And that should make that function just work. And then we can just pass in item.user.id, comma, item.user.displayName. And that'll solve that little issue there. And then when we do our other results, we can say group result like that. We can come in here and literally just copy this little bit of code here, paste, and then do group result dot, and then see what we got for our dot. It's going to be dot groups. And then we'll say item dot ID like that. And then item dot, let's see, name it's going to be. So name, because we want the name of the group. And that's it. And that should, in theory, just work. So now if we log in to our group here, in theory, it should just work. So submit, Well, we got an error, so that's not a good sign, but let's take a look. WebSocket exception, user ID not found, invalid channel target. So if we take a look, let's see what's going on here. Nakama 500, join chat async. So the chat doesn't exist yet. So that's why it's blowing up on us. Because I believe when we create a chat, we need to actually do it slightly different when we join a chat. So if we join a direct chat, we need to join chat async with the user ID direct message. So it is just join chat async. So that should work. Is it the wrong ID I'm trying to pass in for my item ID? That's very possible. So my guess is, what I'm thinking is that we don't pass in the right channel type here because it's a group chat. It needs to be a channel type group chat, not direct message. So we'll say channel type, and then we'll just pass in a channel type like that. And then that's going to allow us to do comma, channel type, direct message. And then for this one, we'll change it to channel type group and see if that will work instead. So let's refresh this bad boy and let's try it one more time. So submit. And there we go. So we have test 2 and test 2 as well. So actually, I think that's just moving it over. There we go. So you can see we have test 2, our chat with test 2. We have our chat with the strong warriors, which is right here. And then we have the chat with display name as well. So the cool part about this is if we grab the strong warriors here, so we're going to be on that channel real quick, and we go test 2, submit. Oh, they broke for me real quick. WebSocket exception, group not found, invalid channel target. So our group is broken. My guess is that this is trying to sub to a group that doesn't exist. But I think because he was banned, we actually can't add him. So I'm going to add a member myself. So I'll go and fetch the test 2, and we will go ahead and grab his user ID and force add him to the group because he's been banned. So he actually can't join without being force added. And you can see it won't even let me because he's been banned from the actual game. Like I can't join him. That's interesting. Okay, so we're not going to be able to use this group. That's totally fine. What we'll do is we'll use the other one. So I'm going to come in here, change this from test 2 to chat test group, or just chat test will be fine. We'll say chat test. And then for members, I'm going to go ahead and just add test 2 to that group. That way it's just already handled for us, so I don't have to faff around with the user interface. And we'll come in here, and you'll see that when test joins, test 2 logs in, you'll see, well, this one broke, so we do need to do a try catch here. So what we'll do is we'll grab this guy. We're going to do a quick try catch here. So when this happens, it blows up. So we'll say try and then do a catch. And that's basically going to catch this error. So that way, if for some reason we get into an error state, it's going to solve that. There we go. And so now we can come in here, refresh, and actually let me double check what my catch does. It's going to throw. We don't want it to throw. So I'm just going to tell it to do nothing for now. This is really poor form. You should not do this. You should probably just print like this. Error can't join chat. And that way we have some kind of information here. We could probably just pass in our display name of that chat. That way it exists. And now we can just refresh this and try it one more time and see what happens. So we'll come in here, we'll hit submit. We'll do test 2, submit, and you'll see that we have chat test, and you'll see that we have chat test. So now if I come in here, I can type test, and he should have gotten it, but he didn't. So that is interesting. So now we're going to have to see what's going on. Did I get any errors or anything weird like that? No, I didn't. So why did it not send the message as expected? Let's see what happens if we hit refresh. It's possible that there might be something weird going on. So I'm going to refresh it, and I got no data on here. So that means that this guy, when I hit test, is not sending out the data properly to the correct channel. So we're going to have to figure out why that's breaking. Okay, so I think I might have a lead on what's going on here. So when we switch our tab here, this section here is being ran 3 times. So every single time it's looping through each one of our tabs, and it's saying that we're switching to each tab, and then it always ends up with the last one. So I think we need to just pass in index like that, and then we need to pass in comma index like that. And then I think we need to go comma index or int index like that, and then argument cannot convert long to int, so we'll go long instead. That's fine. And then that'll allow us to pass in that index right here, and then we can basically do, instead of current chat is equal to channel, we can check if our chat channels bracket index. And this is mad because we don't have a integer here. It's a long, so we'll convert it to an int. So we'll go parentheses int, and that'll just force that into an int for our compiler. It'll just say this is an int, and then that will handle that. And so if this is equivalent to that, then we can come in here and do this, and that will allow us to kind of refresh our chats and go from there. So now, in theory, if we refresh this, hopefully it will work. So we'll hit submit. We'll go test2, submit. We will go to chat test, and then chat test. We'll type test, send, and it's still broken. Well, that's majorly unfortunate. So let's see, why is it broken here? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the strong warriors on this guy. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my thing here. I'm going to drop a breakpoint right here. I'm going to hit Control-Shift-P, and I'm going to type attach. So this is going to allow me to attach to a process, and I'm going to type Godot, and now I got to find which one I want to attach to. And I have a bunch of Godot instances open, but the one I'm looking for is either this one or this one, right? It's the bottom two, because I have 2 instances. So I'm going to guesstimate that it's going to be this one, and that hopefully will be correct. So we'll change from strong warriors to the chat test, and it was the right one. So that's awesome. So we'll see what this is. This says index 2. And if we take a look at our chat channels here, index 2, this is test display name. So it's not correct.
So
we
we'll
wanted index 1. So our indexes are offset by 1.
Awesome.
So we're going to need to do a real quick math lesson here and fix it. So we'll disconnect, and then we'll go
index
parentheses
this
like
is test
this,
display name. So it's
minus
not correct.
1.
We wanted index 1.
And I guess
so
I can't do an operand
of
a
so we're going to need to
so that's fine. So what I'll do is I'll say
and fix it. So
int
we'll
I is equal to
go
parentheses int
like this minus
index
1.
minus 1.
And I guess
like
I
that.
can't do an operand.
And let's see if that will work. And then I'll just pass in I.
So what I'll do is
that.
I'll say,
or I could try just doing
int
minus 1.
I is equal to
I think that might work better. It'll be a little bit better
int
off. Hopefully, this is not the most ideal
minus
solution
1,
here. I don't know why it's like this,
that.
but let's try that and let's see if that solves our problem real quick.
Will
So we'll
And then I'll
go
just pass
test.
in I.
We'll come in here, test2, submit, chat test, flip, chat test, send. And now it works. We'll hit submit, test words, and there we go. So now our group chatting is working. So now we can hit refresh, and it should work when we log in and we go to chat test. There's our words. Awesome. So now at this point, you guys have seen most of the ways that you're going to do this. But one last way is doing what's called a dynamic chat. And a dynamic chat really only exists when you're doing something like a match or a really quick chat that exists, if that makes sense. So typically if you have like a lobby or something like that and you want people to communicate, that's what a dynamic chat is for. It's not persistent and it doesn't stay forever. It's just for that specific time frame. So let's go and take a look at how to do that join chat. So if we come up here, we do have a join chat function right here. So we could either make it so that we come up with our own
name, and then we just have a name and we make sure that people go a part of that name. Or when the users join a game, I believe right here, we're actually joining a match ID right here. So we could actually come in here and create a chat specifically for that. Or if we take a look, you can see we're doing name of match join. So I think, let's see, on join button down. I believe that's the right button. Let me see. Yes, on join button down. So I was correct. So here's where we're doing our join. So we are pulling back this lobby name text right here. So what we can do is basically join that chat while we're there. So we could come in here and type await join socket.join chat asynchronously. Then we could pass in a target. Now the target can be whatever we want it to be, right? So we'll just pass in this node right here, lobby name.text. So we'll copy that bad boy, put that in, comma, and then for the channel type, we'll just say that it is considered a room chat like that. And then we'll say false, false like that. And that just basically makes it global. It makes it so that we don't have persistence. So when the group gets destroyed, it's going to destroy that chat as well. And then we're going to need to actually make that chat exist, right? So we need to actually make it so that that is a thing. And then when we join that chat, it's going to return an iChannel. So we'll say current chat is equal to this. And then we need to actually list that chat. So if we come down here where we're doing our adding of a chat right here, we could probably just pass in and add to chat right here. So we'll come back up here to where we were, which is right here. And we will come in here and say like that. And we have to pass in an ID. So our ID is going to be this ID right here. So we'll copy this. We might need to pull back the actual ID of the match. We might need to actually just pull this back. So I think what I'm going to do before I even make this mistake, we'll just come down here and we'll just do this. And then instead of doing this lobby name, we'll just do match.id like that. And then we'll say add to chat. And the chat that we need to do is an ID. So match.id, comma. And then for the display name, we can actually just use the lobby name. So we'll get this node lobby name.text, copy that, paste, comma. And then we could do channel type, which is going to be a room. And there we go. And that should work in theory, at least. So we'll refresh this and let's try it. So we'll hit submit. We will hit test to submit. We will join a chat, test chat here. Join, and then let's take a look. Here is test, send a message, and we got nothing. So something is broken here. Okay, so after a few hours of debugging, I think I figured out what's going on. So I will explain to you guys what I have changed from before, and then we can go from there. So first things first, I removed these guys up here in my socket section. Basically, because we were ripping out our previous socket, when we were connecting to our chats, it completely pulled out that socket information and it completely broke everything. So since we reinitialized our socket, it kind of wiped all of our memory and put Nakama in a very weird state. So that was the first major change. The other major change that you'll notice is that I am no longer connecting to my chat in this section. And the reason why is because add to chat actually already does that. And you'll also notice that if I come over here, I put false, false. And so what that does is if I come to our add to chat, I added in a couple of defaults right here, persistent and public room. And that's because these guys were hard coded to true and false. And we don't want that, right? Because we want to be able to change that if our direct chat or if our chats don't want to be persistent, we can't do that. So I basically made it so that we can now do that. We can override it.
And that's primarily all of the changes I made, other than a bunch of logging changes and stuff like that, because I had some issues. And one other thing I wanted to make sure I highlight is right here. The reason why we're doing this -1 is because of the tab that we already have in here. So you can see right here, we have this text edit tab. If we didn't have this tab here, and we completely eliminated this, we would not need that -1. So if we got rid of this here, so if I delete this text edit like so, and then I come in here, I could pull this guy -1 out and everything would just work as expected. So just make sure that you keep that in mind, so that way you're not confused why it needs that -1. It's literally just because of that extra tab that was right there. Now, once we have this, we should be good to go. So we can hit play, and you'll see if I go join, and then if I do test 2, join, and then join, you'll see test, and you'll see test. And then if I come in here and I type test, you'll see now it's working. And that's basically how you do it. Now, since this isn't persistent, if we refresh this, you'll see once I come in here, submit, join, and then I go over to test, when it does that list, it doesn't exist. That's because it's not persistent, so it doesn't stay. And something that I neglected to mention earlier is, since these guys are persistent, we as admins, as the people that run the game, have visibility on all of the messages that have ever been sent in these chats. So if we wanted to, we could come in here, find out what this identifier is, and actually pull back their data. You can pass in your channel ID here, and you would be able to actually see your person's information and what messages were sent. But unfortunately, actually, it looks like I have an old one right here. So if we hit search, you'll see that there it is, right? And what this is our group identifier. So you can see if we look at chat test, our group identifier, if we copy this group identifier and we go to our chat messages and we go to group chat, we hit paste, you'll see here's all of the chats that have ever been done inside of that group. So you can see what kind of content's being passed around. And this can be really nice. Like I said, this is just JSON content. So you could put any data that you want. If you want an item to be traded between people, or you wanted somebody to do some kind of guild announcement or something like that, you could change this type of parameter and pass basically whatever you want to the other people, as long as it's JSON data. So now at this point, you have a very basic understanding of how all of the messaging works inside of Nakama. So now the last thing I wanted to talk about was how to make your stuff work outside of your own local network. So how do you actually make stuff work out on the web? And that is where DigitalOcean comes in. DigitalOcean is a pretty great toolkit that will allow you to host your projects right here on their servers. And it's relatively cheap. If you take a look at the pricing, you can see they have some pretty cheap droplets. So if you wanted a cheap, like $5 server to host your game, that's more or less what this is for, is it allows you to actually host stuff out in the cloud for relatively cheap. And I will drop a link in the description below that if you guys use it, it will give me credits to be able to host my own stuff. Now, I will be hosting stuff for this tutorial here. I'll be giving you guys an IP address, and you guys can use it for your testing. But just know that if you want to go out into production, you need to use your own server. And something to keep in mind, you can host your own server as well locally, but it's a lot harder. It's not as safe, and people can hack into your networks and things like that. So it's really nice just to use something like this to host it for you, so that you can get your game out there and get people playing it and playing together. So let's go ahead and create an account or log in, whichever one you guys have. So I'm going to go ahead and log in real quick. So this is DigitalOcean, and basically the nice thing here is this is your dashboard, right? So this is the DigitalOcean dashboard. So here is where you can manage all of your resources. Now you can see up here, you have your profile information, and then you have whatever droplets you have. Now in DigitalOcean, droplets are considered
machines. Okay. And you can see that they have all sorts of really cool features here. They have spaces, which is basically like storage. They have database stuff. So if you actually come in here, you can see that you can spin up databases right here. So if you're using Nakama, you can actually store your database outside of your droplet and allow for load balancing. They actually have a full built-in load balancing system right here, spinning up a load balance. So you can actually choose different data regions and pass data in between different regions and things like that by using their load balancers. Now, that being said, that's way beyond the scope of this tutorial, but that's what I'm trying to say is DigitalOcean has a bunch of stuff for you to use that can help you get up to the point where you can use Nakama Premium and actually have them handle a lot of that for you. But this is a good way to kind of get started into that, if that makes sense. So let's go ahead and talk about how to create a droplet. So let's go up here to the upper right-hand corner, click on Create, click on Droplet. You could do an app platform. That's technically going to be cheaper, but it's a lot harder to get everything set up properly. So I'm just going to do a droplet for right now. And so we can pick what region we want our droplet in. So right here, I'm going to choose New York. New York is the closest to me, so we'll choose that. We'll come down here and you could choose an image. Now, if you have a specific image that you're looking for, go ahead and pick it right here. In my case, I'm going to go with Ubuntu, but if you want to, you can also look at the marketplace and you could pick different stuff. So Docker on Ubuntu probably would be a good image to get, or maybe something like LAMP if you're trying to do a LAMP server, or WordPress or something like that. They have so many different droplets that you can actually have at your disposal. And you can see here, you can also do custom images. So if you have an image, you can actually just spin it up and have it work. Now, in my case, I'm going to go with OS Ubuntu. We're going to start from base, even though technically Docker on Ubuntu probably is a better option. So I'm going to go, so I'm going to go with Marketplace Docker on Ubuntu. That's going to save us a lot of trouble and get it all set up for us, right? So all we have to do is get our Docker Compose and then set up our firewall rules and we'll be good to go. So we'll go ahead and add that guy. Now, if you come in here, you can see that you have a bunch of different options for size. Now, it depends on what you're trying to do. And typically what I tell people is you want to pick the lowest value that you can and +1. So for instance, if you think that your game is going to be really small and not a lot of people are going to play it, then something like the $14 a month one is probably pretty good. If you're looking for something really cheap just for testing, if you go to regular and you kick it over, you can see that you can just do something like the $6 a month one, or even the $4 a month one if you can get away with under 10 gigabytes. If you were to come up here and choose OS Ubuntu, then you could go down to $4 a month at 512 megabytes. Now, once you get down that low, this is basically only used for testing. You want to, at minimum, have $6 a month, the 1 gigabyte, one CPU, just because it's going to allow you to have a lot more flexibility for your project. Now, since I'm doing a marketplace image of, now, since this is going to be a tutorial, I should probably just do Ubuntu with the 4, because odds are you're not going to have the funding to do this or something like that. So we'll try the 4. We might have to upgrade to 6. We'll see. And then you can see here that you can add a volume, which will allow you to expand your disk space. Now, in our case, we don't need that because it's fine for right now. And you can see that we have authentication. So we have SSH, key, and password. Now, in my case, we're just going to do... So I'm going to set my password right here, and we'll scroll down here. And you can see that we can do improved metrics and monitoring for free. So may as well turn that on. And I don't think we need to do a database cluster here, but we can look at that in the future. So you can see here is our host name right here, which I'll call it YouTube2. Tags, I'm not worried about it. And then you'll see that it has a project right here. Now this project is where it's going to get billed under. So don't worry. It'll just get billed under your account. And then we'll click Create Droplet. Now, this is going to allow us to have a droplet once it gets built, which should be relatively quick. There we go. You can see it's in the middle of building it, and it is now completed. So it actually created your little droplet right here. So now at this point, once we click into it, you can see here is our YouTube 2 droplet. You can see we have our graphs for our bandwidth, CPU usage, stuff like that. We have access, which allows us to adjust our access to it. We have power, which allows you to turn it off and on. We have volumes, which allow you to have block storage. Resize, which allows you to change how big and strong that droplet is. So you're welcome to go in and actually upgrade this later. So if you need that 1 gig of memory or that 10 gigabyte SSD, right? That's all stuff that right here is available. And then you can come in here and go into networking. You can change your network IP address, your firewall stuff. You can come in here and back it up. You can get snapshots of it. So that way, if you need this droplet to be perfect and snapshotted for backup purposes, this is what this is for. It allows you to basically go back to that point in time and apply it to your image. So the nice thing is if you create snapshots and your stuff gets hacked or something like that, you can roll back to that snapshot and stop that hack from happening. Kernel is something that you're not going to be using, but basically it allows you to upgrade your Linux kernel. History is the history of it. Destroy allows you to destroy that droplet. Tags allows you to tag it. And recovery allows you to try to recover your droplet. Now that we've gone through all of this, let's go up to our console here and click on that. You'll see that that's going to pop up a droplet console. Now, this is pretty cool because you actually have a full Linux machine here. So if you don't know Linux, now's the time to learn because Linux is very important to know. So first things first, inside of Ubuntu, to install Docker, what you need to do is you need to type sudo apt-get update, and that's going to update all of your mirrors out there. And then we need to go in and actually add the repository because Docker doesn't actually exist in the repo by default. So we'll say sudo apt-get install ca-certificates curl like that. And that's going to go ahead and make sure that we have curl installed. And then we'll sudo install -m 0755-d /etc/apt/key rings. And then we're going to go in and curl out to the Docker Linux Ubuntu. I will actually leave these commands in the comments below, by the way, so you guys can use it. But sudo curl -fss-l fs capital SL https://download.docker.com/linux/ubuntu/gpg-o /etc/apt/key rings/docker.asc. And what that's going to do is it's going to actually create a Docker GPG apt repo for you. So that way you can actually go and install Docker. And then we need to allow access to it. So sudo chmod a+r/etc/apt/key rings docker asc. And that basically allows us to execute and use that data that's right there. So basically Linux is a permission system that is very, very aggressive. So you need to make sure that you keep that stuff under wraps, if that makes sense. So Linux by default does not give you permissions to anything, and you have to give yourself permissions to it. So that's kind of what we're doing right here. So then we can come in here and finally fire off our apt resources. Now, this command is going to be really difficult to do. So we'll do echo/enter, and that's going to allow us to kind of get a actual script going here. So we'll say quote deb space bracket arch equals $ dpkg -- print architecture signed by equals /etc /apt /key rings /docker .asc bracket https://download .docker.com /linux /ubuntu. And then we're going to put that in $etc/os-release, and we're going to echo our version code name. And we're going to pull back the stable version like that. We're going to pass in a pipe, and we're going to pipe that into sudo t/etc/apt/source.list.d /docker.list greater than sign /dev /null. And I know that that's a terrible command, but basically all this command is doing is we're going and we're adding in, we're going deb all of this information, and we're piping all this info into our sources list right here for Docker. And that's basically all we're doing here. I know that it seems really confusing, but that's basically what we're doing here. Now I'm going to double check this command because I just spotted a mistake right here where I did equal instead of --. So let me double check this command and make sure that I'm happy with it. So we have arch $depackage our print architecture. We're going to sign it by our Docker ASC file, and we're going to go out to our Docker Linux Ubuntu, and we're going to pull back the OS release, and I misspelled echo right here. You can see I made a mistake. As always, you make a million mistakes when you do this. So echo So that's ECHO. And then we have our version code name that we are echoing into our release. We're pulling back the stable edition. We're going to pipe that into sudo t right here into our Docker lists. And we're greater than /dev null. And we'll run that. Command ECO is not found. That's because I spelled echo wrong. So I guess it's a good thing that it failed immediately. So ECHO, and we will try running it. Hopefully this doesn't blow up. All right, so we have no such file or directory. So, all right, so I think I figured it out. Basically, there was an issue with the command for, I think it was this area here. So don't worry, just copy what I have in my description and just use that, and it will just work for you. So now all I got to do is type sudo apt-get update like that. And that's going to update all of our packages in our repo. And it's going to go and fetch out to the Docker system and pull back the actual Docker packages. So you can see right here, it's actually pulling down that information right there. And then we're going to go ahead and install Docker. So sudo apt-get install docker-ce docker-ce-cli container.io docker-build-plugin. And finally, the most important one of the group, docker-compose-plugin. And that's the big one. That's the one that's actually going to matter for our project for the most part. I mean, the rest of these are obviously important. Docker-ce is the Docker runtime. Docker-ce CLI is the command line interface. The containered is the actual container system. Docker build plugins is to build your own Docker containers. And then Docker Compose allows you to actually compose Dockers based off of a Docker composition file. If you remember before when we talked about how to build Nakama, that was one of the big things that you needed to use. So we'll hit enter. It's going to go ahead and try to pull it. It says that it cannot locate the Docker build plugin. My guess is I spelled something wrong here. So let's see. Docker build X plugin. There we go. Hit go, and it should go ahead and download and install Docker. Now we might need to upgrade to the next step up to the 1 gigabyte edition, but we're going to see if we can get away with the $4 a month version first. And if we can't, then we'll upgrade to the $6 a month version, and then we can run our Docker setup here. So we'll see how this works, but we'll go from there. So it looks like it is running. If we type PS, you will see that we have a bash and PS running. So if we type Docker, is it going to pop up? And there we go. So we do have Docker running. So perfect. That's exactly what we want. So now from here, we need to get a Docker compose file onto here. So if we type ls right here, you can see that we have nothing going on. So what we can do is we can type mkdir Nakama, cd Nakama, like that, and that's going to get us into that directory. So mkdir makes the directory, cd Nakama just brings us into the Nakama directory. So now we can come in here and basically compose our Docker file. So if we're lucky, we'll be able to just copy and paste our composition file. So if we go out here, we go to documents and we find our Nakama instance. I believe I have a Nakama server tutorial, docker compose.yaml. So if we open this guy up, you'll see this is what our Docker compose file looks like. You can see right here, this is what it looks like. So if we hit Control A, Control C, and then we go into our web browser here and we type nano docker dash compose.yml, and then we right click paste, it should paste all that data right into here. So that way we don't actually have to set up FileZilla. Because one of the things that's unfortunate is a lot of times if you're doing Godot networking, you need to actually put files up into FileZilla and into the FTP and bring them over to DigitalOcean's, to your DigitalOcean droplet. So thankfully we can just copy and paste this and Control X, Y, and it'll be docker compose.yaml. And now from here, we should be able to just get it to run if we're lucky. So what we'll do, come in here and type docker compose up. And you'll see it's going to go ahead and attempt to pull and build our Docker instance right here. Now, we might run out of RAM. It just kind of depends. But hopefully with 512 megs of RAM, it's going to be really tight. I don't know if this is going to work. We're probably going to need a gig. But we can see. So we'll let this run and we'll attempt to run it. And it looks like it might have worked. So what we can do is if we go out to our YouTube 2, we grab our public IP, we go to our Nakama console, and we just put in, actually, I'll just make a new thing, colon, and we'll put in 7351. So 7351, enter. Does it do anything? That's the first question. It doesn't look like it's going to. So now we got to figure out, is it this guy's fault? It looks like this is running. So my question is, server is ready to receive web requests. So it did spin up properly. It started the rule manager properly. So that's good news. Oh, you can see it is just absolutely chugging though. So if we take a look at our YouTube Docker container, let's see. It looks like our CPU utilization is pretty high. Our disk IO is relatively high as well. We probably need to upgrade to have 1 gig of RAM, but at least it is running. So there is that. The question is, so I was able to get it to stop. So what we'll do is we'll close it. We'll go to our YouTube. We'll go over to upgrade droplet. And then we'll go ahead and just upgrade that up to one size larger to the 1 gigabyte edition. So we'll do that. And then we'll click CPU RAM. When it's going to ask us to turn off our droplet. So we'll go up to power. We'll power it off because there's nothing on here anyway. So we can just power cycle it pretty hard. There we go. It's powered down. We'll go to resize and we'll adjust it up one size just to let it be the proper size that it needs to be. We're going to let that run. You'll see it's thinking about it. There we go. And now we got a one size bigger droplet. Now we can go ahead and power cycle that bad boy back on. Let's go into our networking. Let's come down to our firewall and create a firewall. Now the firewall is just going to be test firewall. And what we'll do is we'll have an inbound of SSH. We're also going to allow a custom one, and we're going to allow for 7351. So we'll copy that bad boy and we'll go ahead and paste it like that. And then we'll do the same thing for 7350 as well. And then we're going to allow another one, which is going to be 7351 UDP and 7350 UDP. That way we can have all of our stuff, all of our ducks in a row and everything kind of covered. Now you can see here, all outbound is good and we should be good to go. So we'll go ahead and hit create firewall, and that should create that firewall onto that networking system. So if we go to our droplet, and we go to YouTube 2, you should see right here under our firewall, networking, no firewalls are applied to this droplet, so I need to apply this firewall. So let's see if we need droplets. We can choose our droplet, add droplet, and then we will search for YouTube 2, and we'll go ahead and connect it to that droplet. So now that should give our droplet the firewall it needs to do its job. So now we should be able to go to console and fire that up, and then hit CD Nakama, and then Docker compose up. And in theory, it should run a lot faster, which it is. You can see it's actually firing off just well. The init node was successfully done. Cockroach database is up. So now we're starting to get the proper logs that we expect. So my guess is it had something to do with the lack of RAM that we had. So let's try that. We'll refresh. And there we go. So you can see now we have Nakama running out on our website, which is 198.199.80.118. And you guys, of course, can go to this and use it. So if you type admin password, you can see we have our Nakama instance just like before. And it's exactly the same. So you guys can actually use this for your own project, providing that it doesn't get shut down immediately, because for some reason it gets shut down sometimes and that causes some issues. But that's how easy it is to get this to fire off. Now, and in order to detach, let's hit Control C. We'll stop our Docker connection right here. And you'll see in a second it's going to gracefully stop. So we'll give it a minute to kill everything. We'll hit Docker compose up -- detach. And what that should do is it should allow us to fire this up and be detached. And there you go. So now we're detached. So if we hit PS, you'll see that it's not running. But if I come in here and I refresh, you can see that Nakama is running. If I close this and I refresh, you'll see that Nakama is running, even though we are no longer connected to our Docker instance. So that's how we can actually get that to run without needing to keep that window open. Because if you were to have closed the window when Nakama's running like that previously without running the -- detach, then it would have closed that Docker instance and then your whole project would have been gone. So that's basically how that works. So now if we head back into Godot here, you'll see this is our little scene here. And all we have to do is come up into our scripts, come down and find where our IP address is right here and change it to the IP of this value right here. So we'll grab this guy, copy it, and then I'm going to go back into my script here and I'm going to hit paste. We'll go ahead and get rid of all of this because we don't need all the rest of that. And that's pretty much all we need to do. Now, anytime we send this out to our friends, or if we send it out to anybody that wants to use this game, they can just automatically connect up to our Nakama instance. So now we should be able to go in here, hit play, and you'll see that I will be able to log in. Hopefully we'll hit submit. Let's see if anything breaks on our end. Well, I did get an error, so that's not a good sign. Async error finding user account. So it looks like this Nakama instance might not have the user account. An error occurred when trying to list the users. So I feel like I'm going to have to go back here, go into my console, and then we're going to have to reset some of this. So what we'll do is we'll ls cd into Nakama, and then I'm going to just go docker compose. I believe we did docker compose up dash detach last time. So let's do that. And that should start up our cockroach DB real quick, and then hopefully get everything settled here. So we're going to let that run. It says it's healthy now. So now if we head over to our console, we refresh, and then we go to our accounts, you'll see that we now have our accounts right here. So now in theory, we should be able to log in. So if we come in here, hit submit, let's take a look at our instance here. Authenticated with session token, that, and then we should be able to do the same thing. Test 2, submit. It should authenticate with a session token like that. And then we should be able to message each other. So we should be able to go with test, join direct chat, test 2, join direct chat, test, join direct chat. So it looks like our memory is just not enough. You can see here we really maxed out our memory when we booted up Cockroach Database. So I think we're going to need to increase our actual volume here. So let's go ahead and do that real quick and go from there. So I'm going to turn off our droplet. So it's going to be dead. And then I will come into our resize, and we're going to need more memory. So we're going to need to go up to a faster machine. And I don't like doing that, but that's what we're going to need to do. So I guess we'll go up to 2 gigabytes of memory, because 1 gig was enough to run Docker, but not enough to run Nakama. So that's something to keep in mind. Sometimes you just need to move up in size. So we'll go ahead and resize and let that run through. Now that it's been resized, let's go scroll up and let's click on our console real quick. So we'll go to power, we'll turn it back on, and we will go ahead and click on our console. Let's go cd Nakama, ls, and then docker compose up dash detach. I forget if it's double dash or single dash, so we'll go with double dash. So you'll see in a second that in our droplet here, it's going to up our memory usage, and we'll see, there we go. You can see it's at 88%. So I think that will help with keeping stuff stable. You can see now it's healthy. And if we take a look at our Docker containers, it looks like it's now healthy here. So that should work, hopefully. So now if we go back to our Nakama console, refresh, go to our accounts, there we go. So now let's go in here. We already have our stuff set up. We'll hit play. So submit, join, test 2, submit, join, test, and we'll send a message. And it didn't send anything, but it does seem to be at least operating. So something's unhappy here. Null reference exception. My guess is current chat isn't getting set properly. Take a look. Probably because we didn't change our tab. So when we joined our match, I think what we'll do, because here's where we add in that chat. You can see that we're not setting any current chat. And so the system doesn't know that that chat exists. So what I'll do is I'll do this. So what we'll do is we're going to set our current channel here, and then I will also set my tab index to this. So we will go fetch wherever our tab index is, which, if I remember correctly, is this tab container right here. So I'll just grab this tab container like this, copy, paste, dot, and I think inside of Nakama, inside of Godot, it's called current tab. So current tab is equal to chat channels.count
-1, and that will allow us to set it to the proper tab every single time. And now if we refresh, in theory, this should just work. We found a small bug there, but let's see. Test 2, join, test, and there we go. So you can see now we're sending our messages through the actual internet. We're actually sending it to our Nakama console out in the web. You can actually see it right here. 2 sessions, 6 presences, and data's getting sent through just like that. And you can actually look at our matches. You can see we have a match with 2 people in it. So that's really cool. So now everything that we have should just work right out here on the web. And providing that this doesn't crash down on me like it did before because of memory issues, you guys are welcome to use this IP address for your testing. So it's going to be in the description below. You guys can just go ahead and use it for your testing. But I'm going to get with one of my friends. He's going to show off it working, and we're going to play a multiplayer, you know, back and forth and just show it working over the internet with my friend. So I will be right back. And you can see we're going to log in, and then we'll go ahead and join this match, and then we'll send back a message to each other. So that way you can see we are actually connected. So now we'll go ahead and hit ready and let the game run. And you can see that we both can move our characters at the same time, and the game actually works. So awesome. Everything seems to be working pretty well. So at this point, we have a very basic Nakama multiplayer system that has been built. So in this video, we talked about how to get groups working. We talked about how to get chatting working and how to get communication between people actually operating. And then we talked about the beauty of DigitalOcean and how to host Nakama out on the internet so that multiple people can play games together and work together. So if you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. Hey, you know, if you dislike this video, go ahead and hit that dislike button because I'm here to make content for you guys. This video was a viewer suggested video. So if you have any suggestions, please leave them in the comments below, or jump on my GitHub, link is in the description, and put in an issue ticket. That's where I keep track of all of my suggestions. So if you put in a ticket there, I can go ahead and triage it and start working towards getting it done. And hey, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below, or jump on my Discord, link is in the description for that, and anyone there will be more than happy to help you out. But that is all I have for you guys today. So thank you so much again for watching, and I will see you all next time. Thanks.